Craving does not steal your joy all at once. It steals it quietly, one thought at a time. It tells you the life you have is not enough yet. It tells you peace is waiting somewhere ahead, in the next success, the next person, the next answer, the next achievement, the next version of yourself. But if joy is always somewhere ahead, why does the heart still feel empty after getting what it once wanted? Why does the mind keep asking for more, even when the moment in front of you already has enough to be grateful for? This is how craving works. It does not always look like greed. Sometimes it looks like hope. Sometimes it looks like ambition. Sometimes it looks like love, control, healing, or the desire for a better life. But beneath it, there is often a quiet message. This moment is incomplete. This life is not enough. You cannot rest yet. And slowly, without noticing it, you stop tasting the simple blessings already around you. The breath in your body becomes ordinary. The people who care for you become invisible. The small piece of today feels too small because the mind is busy chasing tomorrow. Buddhist wisdom calls this hunger tanha, the thirst that keeps reaching, clinging, comparing, and becoming. It is the part of the mind that believes happiness can be captured if only life finally obeys your desires. But the Buddha saw clearly that suffering begins when desire becomes attachment, when the heart asks changing things to give permanent peace, and when temporary pleasures are treated like they can complete the soul. Tonight, as you listen to these teachings, you may begin to notice the places where craving has been quietly taking from you. You may see how it turns enough into not yet, how it makes silence uncomfortable, how it hides the beauty of what is already here. And as awareness grows, the chase may begin to slow down. The grip may begin to loosen. The present moment may begin to feel less empty, less ordinary, and more alive. This is not just a teaching about wanting less. This is a return to the life you already have. The joy was not completely gone. It was only buried beneath the noise of craving. And when the heart stops begging the world to complete it, peace begins to rise from within. Are you ready? Let's begin. And this is where the first doorway opens. If craving is the noise that buries joy, then we must begin by looking at the quiet way it changes the present moment. Because the present is not always empty. Many times it is full. There is breath, there is ground beneath you, there is a body still carrying you, there is a chance to begin again. There are small mercies around you that the restless mind refuses to see. Yet craving walks into this moment like an unpaid debt and says, something is missing. It does not ask whether life is truly empty. It simply convinces the heart that it cannot be complete until something else arrives. This is the strange power of tanha, the craving the Buddha spoke about. It makes a full moment feel unfinished. It makes a simple day feel like a problem. It makes a peaceful room feel lonely, not because the room has no peace, but because the mind has already left it. The body may be sitting here, but the heart is chasing there. The eyes may be seeing what is present, but the mind is measuring what is absent. And when the mind becomes trained to look only for what is absent, even a blessed life can feel poor. There is a kind of suffering that does not come from disaster. It does not come from losing everything. It comes from standing in the middle of enough and being unable to feel it. This is why craving is so difficult to notice. If your house is burning, you know you are in danger. If someone breaks your trust, you know why your heart hurts. If your body is sick, you understand the pain. But craving often hides inside normal life. It hides in the quiet thought that says, I will be happy when this changes. I will relax when I finally get there. I will feel worthy when they finally choose me. I will enjoy my life when I become more successful, more admired, more secure, more loved, more certain. At first, this sounds harmless. It even sounds motivating. But slowly, it teaches the heart to postpone joy. It trains the mind to treat the present like a waiting room. You are here, but you are not really here. You are eating, but thinking of what you do not have. You are resting, but planning what must happen next. You are with people, but comparing the love they give with the love you wish they gave. You are alive, but your attention is always leaning forward, hoping the next moment will finally deliver what this moment seems unable to give. This is how tanha makes the present feel incomplete, even when nothing is truly missing. It creates a false gap between your life and your peace. It whispers that peace is not allowed to begin yet. Not with this body, not with this amount of money, not with this relationship status, not with this past, not with this home, not with this level of success, not with this uncertainty. It keeps placing conditions on your inner freedom until your own life starts to feel like something you must escape from. But look closely. What is actually happening in the present moment before craving enters it? There may be a quiet morning. There may be air entering and leaving your lungs. There may be a chair holding your body. There may be sunlight on a wall. There may be water to drink. There may be food, however simple. There may be one person who still cares. There may be one task you can do. There may be one breath that does not need to be improved. The moment may not be perfect, but it is not empty. It is craving that arrives and says, "This is not enough." And once the mind believes that message, it stops receiving life. It begins negotiating with life. It says, "I will be grateful, but only after I get what I want. I will be calm, but only when the future is clear. I will love this day, but only if it gives me the feeling I asked for. I will accept myself, but only when I become the version I admire in my imagination." Do you see the trap? The heart keeps asking life for permission to rest, but life is always changing, so the permission never comes. The Buddha used the word tanha because craving is like thirst. Not ordinary thirst that can be satisfied by water, but a deeper thirst that keeps drinking salt water and wondering why it becomes more thirsty. The more the mind chases from this place, the more incomplete it feels. It may get the thing it wanted, but the feeling does not stay. It may receive praise, but soon it wants more. It may enjoy pleasure, but then fears losing it. It may reach a goal, but immediately another goal appears. Craving does not end by being fed. It often grows stronger because every temporary satisfaction teaches the mind to chase again. This is why a person can have many things and still feel poor inside. They may have comfort but not contentment. They may have choices but not peace. They may have attention but not inner safety. They may have success, but still wake up with a quiet ache that says, something is still missing. And because they do not understand tanha, they keep blaming the outside world. They think the problem is the job, the house, the partner, the money, the appearance, the recognition, the city, the past, the timing. Sometimes, yes, life does need change. But many times, the deeper suffering comes from the mind's refusal to arrive where the body already is. There is a difference between wise aspiration and craving. Wise aspiration says, I can grow while still honoring this moment. Craving says, this moment is worthless until I become something else. Wise aspiration moves with patience. Craving moves with hunger. Wise aspiration can work, learn, love, save, heal, and improve without making today an enemy. Craving turns today into an obstacle. It tells you that the life you have now is only a problem to solve, not a place where awareness can bloom. This is why craving makes even simple blessings disappear from awareness. When the mind is thirsty for what is not here, it cannot taste what is here. A meal becomes ordinary because it is not the exact meal you wanted. A home becomes disappointing because it is not the dream home. A friend's kindness becomes too small because it is not the love of the person you crave. A peaceful day becomes boring because it is not exciting enough. A small achievement becomes meaningless because it is not the big success. The blessing does not vanish, your attention leaves it. And where attention goes, life becomes real. If attention keeps resting on absence, absence becomes your world. If attention keeps resting on comparison, your life begins to look inferior. If attention keeps resting on what could go wrong, safety becomes invisible. If attention keeps resting on what you have not yet become, your present self begins to feel unacceptable. This is why mindfulness is so important in Buddhist wisdom. Mindfulness brings attention back from the dream of elsewhere. It helps you notice that the mind has been painting lack over a moment that was not lacking. There are people who cannot enjoy a calm evening because their mind says they should be doing more. There are people who cannot enjoy love because they are afraid it is not enough love. There are people who cannot enjoy progress because it is not fast enough. There are people who cannot enjoy rest because guilt turns stillness into weakness. There are people who cannot enjoy silence because silence removes distraction and reveals the hunger underneath. This is not because the present has failed them. It is because craving has trained them to mistrust the present. Craving often begins with a tiny movement of resistance. The mind meets the moment and says, not this feeling, not this body, not this delay, not this uncertainty, not this ordinary day, not this version of life. From that small resistance, a whole world of suffering grows. The mind starts building stories. If I had more, I would be happy. If they changed, I would be peaceful. If the past were different, I could rest. If the future were guaranteed, I could breathe. The heart becomes trapped in a life that exists mostly in thought. And this is one of the deepest ways tanha steals joy. It does not only make you want, it makes you believe that wanting is more real than living. The imagined future begins to feel more important than the real breath. The missing person begins to feel more powerful than the people still present. The dream life begins to feel more valuable than the actual day. The mind bows to what is absent and ignores what is alive. A craving mind is always reaching. It reaches for pleasure because it wants to escape discomfort. It reaches for control because it fears uncertainty. It reaches for approval because it does not feel rooted in itself. It reaches for achievement because stillness feels like failure. It reaches for love because it hopes another person can silence its inner hunger. It reaches for distraction because the present feels too bare. But beneath all these forms, the same thirst is speaking. Let something outside me complete what I have not learned to meet within. This does not mean desire itself is evil. Buddhism is not asking you to become cold, lifeless, or without dreams. The Buddha did not teach that you should stop caring. He taught that suffering grows when desire hardens into clinging. You can enjoy beauty without needing it to stay forever. You can love someone without demanding they become your source of identity. You can work toward a better future without rejecting the life you have now. You can want healing without hating the wound. You can wish for comfort without believing discomfort makes your life meaningless. The problem begins when the mind says, I cannot be okay unless this happens. That is where craving becomes a chain. The present moment becomes a hostage. Your peace becomes dependent on conditions you cannot fully control. And because life is always changing, the mind becomes restless. Even when things go well, craving says, what if it does not last? Even when love is present, craving says, what if they leave? Even when success arrives, craving says, what if someone surpasses me? Even when comfort is here, craving says, what if tomorrow takes it away? So the heart does not rest, even in pleasant moments. It holds them tightly, and the tightness itself becomes pain. This is why craving makes the present feel incomplete, even when nothing is missing. It cannot simply receive. It must own, secure, extend, repeat, improve, compare, and protect. It turns life into a possession, and whatever you try to possess becomes a source of fear. The flower is beautiful, but craving wants it never to fade. The praise feels good, but craving wants it to continue. The relationship feels warm, but craving wants certainty that nothing will ever change. The body feels strong, but craving wants youth to remain untouched. The moment is sweet, but craving wants to freeze it. And because nothing in life can be frozen, craving lives in quiet panic. The Buddha's wisdom begins with seeing clearly, not judging yourself, not blaming yourself, not pretending you have no desires, but simply seeing. When the mind says, "I need this to be happy," pause. When the heart says, "This moment is not enough," pause. When you feel the urge to run into the next distraction, pause. When comparison begins to poison your peace, pause. Ask gently, what is actually missing right now, and what is craving adding to this moment? Sometimes something practical is missing. Maybe you need food, safety, rest, honest communication, medical care, or wise action. Buddhism is not asking you to ignore real needs, but many times when you look closely, you may find that the present is not the enemy. The discomfort comes from the demand that the present becomes something else before you allow yourself to breathe. This kind of seeing is powerful because craving loses strength when it is noticed. Craving grows in unconsciousness. It thrives when you believe every thought it sends. It says, check again, chase again, compare again, worry again, buy again, prove again, explain again, become again. But mindfulness shines a gentle light and says, this is thirst. This is not truth. This is a wave in the mind. I do not have to obey it. The more you practice this, the more you begin to feel the difference between a real need and a restless hunger. A real need brings clarity. Restless hunger brings pressure. A real need can be met with wisdom. Restless hunger keeps changing its object. Today it wants one thing. Tomorrow it wants another. This week it wants praise. Next week it wants escape. This month it wants control. Later it wants a new identity. The object changes, but the thirst remains. That is how you know the problem was never fully about the thing. It was about the mind's habit of leaning away from now. Many people spend years trying to fix the feeling of incompleteness by rearranging the outside of life. They change their appearance, their environment, their relationships, their plans, their goals, their routines. Sometimes those changes help, but if tanha remains unseen, the same hunger follows them into every new place. They get the new job and soon feel restless again. They enter the new relationship and soon fear losing it. They move to the new city and soon feel ordinary again. They buy the new thing and soon look for another thing. They become a new version of themselves and soon that version also feels insufficient. This is not failure, it is a teaching. Life keeps showing that no outer condition can permanently satisfy a mind trained to crave. The mind must learn a different way of relating to the present. It must learn to stop treating now as a mistake. It must learn to rest without needing every desire fulfilled first. It must learn to enjoy without clinging, to work without desperation, to love without hunger, to improve without self-rejection, and to let ordinary moments be enough without forcing them to be extraordinary. Contentment begins here, not as laziness, not as giving up, not as saying life should never change, but as the deep inner shift that says, I can be here without fighting here. I can breathe before everything is solved. I can notice beauty before life becomes perfect. I can be grateful without pretending there is no pain. I can want growth without turning this moment into an enemy. This is not weakness. This is freedom from endless bargaining. When craving rules the mind, everything becomes a bargain. I will be peaceful if life behaves. I will be kind to myself if I improve. I will forgive the past if it finally makes sense. I will rest if tomorrow is guaranteed. I will feel worthy if someone confirms it. I will enjoy today if it gives me what I expected. But life does not move according to these contracts. Life breathes, changes, opens, closes, gives, takes, surprises, delays, and transforms. The heart that demands perfect conditions before it can know peace will spend most of life waiting. This is why the present moment is so sacred in Buddhist wisdom. Not because it is always pleasant, not because it gives you everything you want, but because it is the only place where life can actually be touched. You cannot breathe tomorrow's air. You cannot hold yesterday's sunlight. You cannot love someone in a future that has not arrived. You cannot heal in a past that no longer exists. The only doorway is this moment, and craving keeps pulling you away from that doorway. It says, not here, later, elsewhere, more, different, better, again. And each time you obey without awareness, you move farther from the quiet joy that is available now. The joy may not be dramatic. It may not feel like excitement. It may not impress anyone. It may be as simple as a deep breath after a long day, a cup of tea, clean water, a small laugh, a quiet prayer, the warmth of sunlight, the relief of being forgiven, the strength to keep going, the chance to start over. Craving dismisses these because they do not satisfy the ego's hunger for something bigger. But the awakened heart knows that peace often returns through small doors. The present feels incomplete when the mind measures it against fantasy. Fantasy is easy to love because it asks nothing from you. It has no boredom, no responsibility, no uncertainty, no aging, no disagreement, no delay. The imagined life seems perfect because it has not yet been touched by reality. But real life is textured. It includes both beauty and discomfort. It includes dishes to wash, messages unanswered, bodies that get tired, relationships that require patience, plans that change, mornings that feel heavy, and blessings that arrive quietly. Craving rejects this texture because it wants a smooth life without friction. But wisdom learns how to meet life as it is. The mind says, if nothing is missing, why do I still feel uneasy? And Buddhist wisdom would answer, because uneasiness does not always mean something is missing outside you. Sometimes it means the mind has not learned how to stop reaching. A hand that has been clenched for years may feel strange when it opens. A heart used to chasing may feel lost when asked to rest. Silence may feel empty at first, not because it has no peace, but because you are used to noise. Contentment may feel unfamiliar, not because it is wrong, but because craving has been your habit for so long. This is why practice matters. You do not defeat craving with one thought. You learn to see it again and again. You notice it while eating, when the mind rushes instead of tasting. You notice it while resting, when guilt says you should be doing more. You notice it while scrolling, when comparison begins to make your life look small. You notice it in relationships, when affection becomes demand. You notice it in ambition, when growth becomes self-hatred. You notice it in sadness, when the mind wants pain to disappear immediately instead of being held with compassion. Each moment of noticing is a moment of freedom. You may still feel the craving, but you are no longer completely owned by it. You can say, this is tanha, this is thirst, this is the mind asking the world to complete it. And in that gentle recognition, space appears. In that space, you can return to the body. You can soften the breath. You can look around and ask, what is already here that I have stopped seeing? What small blessing has craving made invisible? What part of this moment can be received without needing it to become more? This is not easy because craving often feels personal. It feels like your identity. It says, This is who I am. I am someone who needs this. I am someone who cannot rest without that. I am someone who must become more before I can be loved. I am someone whose life is incomplete until this desire is fulfilled. But Buddhist wisdom gently questions this. Are you the craving, or are you the awareness that can observe it? Are you the hunger, or are you the space in which hunger appears and disappears? Are you truly incomplete, or has the mind simply repeated the story of incompleteness for so long that you believe it? When you begin to see craving as a passing movement rather than your deepest truth, something softens. You do not have to hate it. You do not have to fight it violently. You simply stop worshipping it. You stop believing every promise it makes. You stop letting it define the value of your life. Craving may say, "This moment is not enough." Awareness can answer, "This moment may not be perfect, but it is real, and I am here to meet it." This is the beginning of quiet joy, not the joy that depends on getting everything, not the joy that disappears when plans change, not the joy that needs applause, possession, control, or constant excitement. This is the joy of returning to breath, returning to the body, returning to gratitude, returning to the simple truth that life is happening now, not later. Returning to the realization that nothing needs to be added to this moment before awareness can touch it. And perhaps this is what craving fears most. It fears your ability to be present without obeying it. Because when you discover that you can breathe now, it loses power. When you discover that you can feel gratitude before everything is fixed, it loses power. When you discover that ordinary moments can nourish you, it loses power. When you discover that peace can begin inside, even while life remains unfinished, it loses power. The present moment does not become complete because it gives you every desire. It becomes complete when you stop demanding that it become another moment before you accept it. A flower is complete even though it will fade. A breath is complete even though another breath must follow. A kind word is complete even though it does not solve your whole life. A simple meal is complete even though it is not a feast. A quiet day is complete even though it is not exciting. Your life in this very moment may still be growing, healing, changing, and unfolding, but it does not have to be rejected while it is doing so. This is the wisdom Tanha hides from you. It tells you that joy belongs to the future, but the future never arrives as the future. It always arrives as now. So if the mind cannot learn to receive now, it will not receive tomorrow when tomorrow comes. It will only turn tomorrow into another doorway toward later. That is the endless chase. That is the wheel of thirst. That is how a whole life can pass while the heart keeps saying, "Not yet." So begin gently. Do not force yourself to desire nothing. Do not shame yourself for wanting. Simply watch the moment where wanting becomes the belief that your life is incomplete. Watch the moment where a natural wish becomes inner pressure. Watch the moment where hope becomes refusal. Watch the moment where the mind stops seeing what is here because it is bowing before what is not here. And then return. Return to the breath that asks for nothing except to be felt. Return to the body that has carried you through days you thought would break you. Return to the small blessings that craving called ordinary. Return to the people, places, and quiet moments that do not have to be perfect to be precious. Return to the life you already have, not because it contains everything you want, but because it is the only place where peace can begin. Craving makes the present feel incomplete, even when nothing is missing, because it teaches the mind to measure life by absence. Buddhist wisdom teaches another way. It teaches you to see clearly, to loosen gently, to receive deeply, and to understand that enough is not a small word. Enough is the place where the heart stops running. Enough is the moment you stop asking life to prove it is worthy of your attention. Enough is the quiet opening where joy returns, not because the world finally gave you everything, but because you finally came back to what was already here. When the heart finally begins to understand that enough is not poverty but peace, another truth becomes easier to see. The problem is not that you want comfort, love, healing, success, or a better life. The problem begins when the mind grabs these things and says, "Without this, I cannot be whole." That is where desire stops being a simple movement and becomes a chain. That is where wanting turns into clinging. And this is why the Buddha did not merely speak about pain on the surface of life. He went deeper. He showed that suffering begins when the heart holds changing things as if they must stay, obey, complete, and protect us forever. There is a moment inside every desire where the heart quietly crosses a line. At first, it may be simple. You want peace after a long season of pressure. You want love after years of feeling unseen. You want respect after being dismissed. You want success after working hard. You want security after uncertainty has tired your spirit. These desires are human. They are not shameful. But then something happens. The mind begins to tighten around them. It stops saying, "This would be good." It starts saying, "This must happen," or "I cannot be okay." It stops saying, "I would enjoy this." It starts saying, "I need this to prove my life has value." That small tightening is where suffering begins. The Buddha saw that life itself is always moving. Nothing stands still. Feelings rise and pass. Bodies grow and change. People come close and move away. Praise appears and disappears. Money increases and decreases. Plans open and collapse. Even the thoughts you believe so deeply today may not feel the same tomorrow. Everything that enters life is touched by change, but clinging does not accept this. Clinging looks at what is changing and demands permanence. It looks at what is uncertain and demands guarantee. It looks at what is borrowed and calls it mine. It looks at what is passing and says, "Stay." And because life cannot obey that demand, the heart suffers. This is why the Buddha taught that suffering begins not simply with desire, but with attachment. A desire can pass through the mind like a bird through the sky. It appears, it is seen, and it moves on. But clinging builds a cage around it. Clinging says, "This desire is not allowed to pass. It must be fulfilled. It must be protected. It must define me. It must become my peace." The mind begins to serve it, defend it, fear losing it, and build an identity around it. What was once a passing wish becomes a master. And most people do not notice when this happens. They only notice the pain after the clinging has already taken root. They notice the anxiety, but not the grasping underneath. They notice the jealousy, but not the fear of losing what they have claimed. They notice the restlessness, but not the belief that something outside them must arrive before they can rest. They notice the disappointment, but not the demand that life should have unfolded according to their desire. This is why Buddhist wisdom asks us to look beneath the obvious feeling and find the hidden grip. There is a deep difference between holding something with love and holding it with fear. You can love a person and still allow them to be human, but clinging wants to own their presence, control their emotions, predict their choices, and make them responsible for your inner safety. You can enjoy success and still remain humble, but clinging turns success into identity, so every failure feels like death to the ego. You can enjoy comfort and still remain free, but clinging makes comfort a prison, because even the thought of losing it creates panic. You can appreciate beauty and still understand change, but clinging tries to freeze beauty and becomes bitter when time refuses. This is why desire becomes suffering when it forgets impermanence. The mind says, "I want this." Clinging adds, and it must not change. The mind says, "I enjoy this feeling." Clinging adds, and it must never leave. The mind says, "I love this person." Clinging adds, and they must always make me feel secure. The mind says, I have achieved something. Clinging adds, and now I must never fall, never be ignored, never be ordinary again. The original desire may be small, but clinging turns it into pressure, and pressure destroys peace. Look at how this works in everyday life. Someone receives a kind message, and for a moment the heart feels warm. But then clinging enters and says, why did they not write more? Will they keep caring? What if they stop? What did they mean by that one word? Suddenly, what could have been received as a simple kindness becomes a source of anxiety. The suffering did not come from the message. It came from the mind trying to own the feeling the message created. Someone earns praise for their work. For a moment there is joy. But then clinging says, now I must always be praised. I must not disappoint anyone. I must keep this image alive. What if next time they do not admire me? What if someone else does better? The praise becomes heavy because the mind has turned it into identity. The suffering did not come from being appreciated. It came from clinging to appreciation as proof of worth. Someone experiences a peaceful season after a long struggle. For a while, life feels softer, but clinging says, this must never end. I cannot go back to pain. I cannot handle uncertainty again. I must control everything so this peace remains. Then peace itself becomes stressful. The person begins protecting peace so tightly that they can no longer enjoy it. The suffering did not come from peace. It came from fear of losing peace. This is the strange thing about clinging. It can turn even pleasant things into suffering. It can take love and fill it with fear. It can take success and fill it with pressure. It can take comfort and fill it with worry. It can take beauty and fill it with insecurity. It can take a happy moment and fill it with the question, how long will this last? Clinging does not know how to receive. It only knows how to grasp. The Buddha's teaching is not asking you to become empty of care. It is not asking you to live without warmth, effort, dreams, or affection. It is asking you to stop mistaking possession for peace. Many people think they are suffering because life has not given them enough. But often they are suffering because the mind is gripping too tightly what life has already given, or gripping too tightly what life has not yet given. Either way, the heart is not free. When desire is light, it can move naturally. You can want something, work toward it, and still breathe. You can hope, but you are not destroyed if the answer changes. You can love, but you do not turn another person into your oxygen. You can plan, but you do not collapse when life takes a different path. You can enjoy, but you do not demand that the enjoyment last forever. This kind of desire does not imprison the heart because awareness remains wider than the wanting. But when desire becomes clinging, the whole mind narrows. Everything becomes about one thing, one outcome, one person, one answer, one achievement, one image, one feeling. The world becomes small because the mind has tied its peace to a single condition. This is why clinging feels so painful. It reduces life to a demand. It says, unless this happens, nothing else matters. Unless they stay, I cannot live well. Unless I win, I am nothing. Unless I am admired, I am invisible. Unless the past changes, I cannot heal. Unless the future is certain, I cannot rest. And because most of these conditions are outside your full control, clinging places your peace in unstable hands. The Buddha taught this because he saw the hidden cost of inner dependence. Whenever your happiness depends completely on something changing, staying, arriving, leaving, approving, or obeying, the mind becomes vulnerable to fear. Not natural vulnerability, but the painful vulnerability of attachment. You begin to fear losing what you have, not getting what you want, being denied what you expect, or facing what you resist. Fear follows, clinging like a shadow. Wherever the heart says, "This must be mine," fear says, "What if it is taken?" Wherever the mind says, "This must happen," fear says, "What if it does not?" Wherever the ego says, "This is who I am," fear says, "What if life proves otherwise?" This is why suffering begins before loss even happens. Clinging makes you suffer in advance. You may still have the thing, yet you are already afraid of losing it. The relationship is still present, but fear is already writing stories. The money is still there, but anxiety is already counting disasters. The body is still functioning, but worry is already imagining decline. The peaceful season is still unfolding, but the mind is already preparing for its end. Clinging cannot fully enjoy what it holds because it is always afraid that life will loosen its fingers. And life always does. Not as punishment, but because change is the nature of existence. The Buddha did not say this to make the heart cold. He said it to make the heart honest. When you understand impermanence, you do not love less. You love more clearly. You stop wasting the present by demanding that it become permanent. You stop turning every beautiful thing into a contract. You stop asking people, feelings, and situations to carry a weight they were never built to carry. You learn to meet life with tenderness, not ownership. Think of holding water in your hands. If your palms are open, you can feel the coolness. You can receive it. But if you squeeze tightly, the water slips away faster. Clinging is like that. It believes tightness protects what is precious, but tightness often destroys the ability to experience it. The more you grip love, the less love feels free. The more you grip pleasure, the less pleasure feels joyful. The more you grip control, the less safe you feel. The more you grip identity, the more afraid you become of change. This is why letting go does not mean throwing life away. It means opening the hand enough to experience life without crushing it. Many people misunderstand non-attachment. They think it means not caring, not loving, not trying, not enjoying, not grieving. But that is not wisdom, that is numbness. True non-attachment is full of care, but free from ownership. It allows love without hunger. It allows effort without desperation. It allows joy without fear of ending. It allows grief without turning pain into identity. It allows change without deciding that change has destroyed the self. Non-attachment does not remove the heart. It removes the chain around the heart. The Buddha taught about clinging because he understood how the mind builds a false self out of what it holds. The mind says, "My success, my pain, my story, my reputation, my beliefs, my relationship, my future, my image, my control." It gathers these things and calls them me. Then it spends life defending them. When one is threatened, the person feels personally attacked. When one changes, the person feels lost. When one is taken away, the person feels empty. But Buddhist wisdom asks a difficult and freeing question. Are these things truly you, or are they experiences passing through awareness? Your thoughts change, your emotions change, your body changes, your desires change, your roles change, your relationships change, your opinions change. Even your strongest identity has shifted many times since childhood. Yet something is aware of these changes. Something sees the desire arise, sees the clinging tighten, sees the pain follow, sees the release begin. The more you rest in that awareness, the less you need to cling to every passing form as if it defines you. This is not a lesson the mind learns once. It must be practiced again and again, especially in moments of strong wanting. When desire arises, it is easy to believe it completely. It fills the body with urgency. It makes the desired thing seem larger than life. It tells you that happiness is on the other side of obedience. It says, get this, hold this, become this, avoid this, remove this, and then you will be free. But if you pause, you may notice that craving speaks in pressure, while wisdom speaks in space. Pressure says, you must have this now. Space says, look carefully before you follow. Pressure says, your life is incomplete without this. Space says, is that true in this breath? Pressure says, if you lose this, you lose yourself. Space says, you have survived many changes before. Pressure says, cling tighter. Space says, soften and see. This pause is where freedom begins, not because desire disappears immediately, but because you are no longer blindly dragged by it. You can feel the wanting without becoming its servant. You can notice the tightening without feeding it. You can name the clinging without hating yourself. You can return to the body, to the breath, to the present, and let the wave move through without building your whole life around it. The Buddha's path is gentle, but it is not shallow. It does not simply say, stop wanting. It teaches you to understand wanting. Where does it arise? What does it promise? What fear hides inside it? What identity is it trying to protect? What emptiness is it trying to cover? What pain is it trying to escape? When you ask these questions with honesty, desire becomes a teacher. It shows you where the heart feels unsafe. It shows you where you have mistaken external conditions for inner refuge. It shows you where old wounds are asking for tenderness, not more chasing. For example, someone who clings to approval may not be vain. They may carry a long history of feeling unseen. Someone who clings to control may not be naturally harsh. They may have lived through seasons where life felt unsafe. Someone who clings to romance may not be weak. They may be trying to find the belonging they never fully received. Someone who clings to achievement may not simply love success. They may fear that without success, they are not worthy. Buddhist wisdom does not mock these patterns. It shines awareness on them so they can soften. Because clinging is often a confused attempt to protect the heart. It says, if I hold tightly, I will not be hurt. If I control everything, I will not be surprised. If I become impressive, I will not be rejected. If I keep this person close, I will not feel abandoned. If I avoid pain, I will stay safe. But clinging cannot protect the heart from life. It only makes the heart more frightened of life. The protection becomes the prison. True protection comes from wisdom. Wisdom says, I can care deeply without making this my whole self. I can work hard without believing failure makes me worthless. I can love someone without using them to escape myself. I can grieve what changes without turning grief into endless resistance. I can want something without handing it the keys to my peace. This is a different kind of strength. Quiet strength. Mature strength. The strength of a heart that has stopped begging impermanent things to become permanent shelter. Suffering begins when desire becomes clinging because clinging argues with reality. Reality says, this is changing. Clinging says, it must stay. Reality says, this is uncertain. Clinging says, I must know. Reality says, this is not fully yours to control. Clinging says, it must obey me. Reality says, this feeling will pass. Clinging says, it must last. Reality says, pain is part of human life. Clinging says, I must never feel it. The argument itself becomes suffering. Peace begins when the argument softens. This does not mean you become passive. It means you act from clarity instead of desperation. If something can be improved, you improve it. If a conversation needs to happen, you speak. If a boundary is needed, you set it. If a dream matters, you work toward it. If healing is possible, you seek it. But you do these things without turning your soul into a hostage. You stop saying, I can only be at peace if life gives me my preferred outcome. You begin saying, I will respond wisely, and I will not abandon myself while life unfolds. There is deep relief in that. Because you no longer have to control everything before you can breathe. You no longer have to receive perfect love before you can feel worthy. You no longer have to erase every wound before you can be gentle with yourself. You no longer have to reach the final version of your life before you can notice the sacredness of this step. Clinging says peace comes after possession. Wisdom says peace begins with seeing clearly. The Buddha taught this because he wanted people to stop searching for freedom in the same place that created bondage. If the mind is attached, even paradise can become stressful. If the mind is free, even an ordinary life can hold quiet joy. This is not poetry. It is something you can test. Take one thing you are clinging to and notice what it does to your body. Does it bring openness or tightness? Does it bring clarity or obsession? Does it make you kinder or more afraid? Does it allow gratitude or does it erase everything else? Does it help you live or does it make you wait? Clinging often feels like love because it is intense, but intensity is not always love. Sometimes intensity is fear wearing the mask of devotion. Love says, "May you be free, and may I meet you with presence." Clinging says, "You must make me feel safe." Love says, "I value this moment with you." Clinging says, "Promise me this will never change." Love says, "I will care with honesty." Clinging says, "I will panic if I cannot possess." Love breathes. Clinging suffocates. Clinging often feels like ambition because it pushes hard. But not all pushing is purpose. Purpose can be steady. Purpose can be patient. Purpose can honor the present while moving forward. Clinging turns ambition into self-punishment. It says, "Until I achieve, I am behind. Until I rise, I am nothing. Until I am admired, I am unseen." This kind of ambition may build outer results, but it often destroys inner rest. The Buddha was pointing to this hidden cost. What is the use of gaining the world if the mind becomes a place of endless hunger? Clinging also hides inside pain. Sometimes people cling not only to pleasure, but to suffering. They cling to old stories because those stories explain who they are. They cling to resentment because it feels like power. They cling to regret because it feels like loyalty to what was lost. They cling to guilt because they believe punishment proves they care. They cling to wounds because healing would require meeting an unknown self. This kind of clinging is subtle, but heavy. It makes pain last longer than the event itself. The Buddha's teaching does not deny pain. It does not say loss does not hurt. It does not say disappointment is nothing. It does not ask you to smile at every wound. It simply shows that pain becomes heavier when the mind wraps identity around it. A painful feeling may arise naturally, but clinging says, "This pain is me. This pain is mine forever. This pain must never change. This pain proves life is against me." Then suffering deepens. The wound becomes a home. Letting go begins when you stop building a self out of what hurt you, what pleased you, what praised you, what rejected you, what you gained and what you lost. You begin to see experiences as experiences. Important, yes. Meaningful, yes. Sometimes painful, yes. But not the whole of you. This seeing gives the heart room to heal. It does not erase memory. It removes the chain. One of the kindest things you can do for yourself is notice where you are clinging and speak to that place gently. Not with shame, not with force, not with anger. You can say, "I see how badly you want this. I see how afraid you are to lose this. I see how tired you are from needing life to happen a certain way. I see how long you have believed you cannot be okay unless this desire is fulfilled." And then you breathe. You do not have to solve the whole pattern at once. You begin by seeing it without becoming it. This is the heart of Buddhist practice. To see clearly, to understand suffering at its root. to notice how desire becomes clinging, how clinging becomes fear, how fear becomes control, how control becomes exhaustion, and how exhaustion becomes the feeling that life itself is too heavy. When you see the chain, you can stop adding new links. And slowly, the mind learns another way. It learns to enjoy without grabbing. It learns to want without worshipping the wanted thing. It learns to work without hatred for the present. It learns to love without ownership. It learns to grieve without refusing change. It learns to hope without making hope a prison. It learns to say, "This is precious because it is here, not because I can keep it forever." That is a very different way to live. Then even ordinary moments change. A cup of tea can be enjoyed without needing the day to be perfect. A conversation can be received without demanding that it fix loneliness forever. A success can be celebrated without turning it into a permanent identity. A quiet season can be appreciated without fearfully asking how long it will last. A desire can arise without becoming a command. A feeling can pass without becoming a tragedy. The heart begins to trust the flow of life because it is no longer trying to freeze the river. This is why the Buddha's teaching is so freeing. It does not depend on the world becoming easy. It does not require everyone to understand you. It does not require every dream to come true. It does not require life to stop changing. It points to a freedom that begins inside the way you relate to experience. The world may still bring pleasure and pain, gain and loss, praise and blame, meeting and parting. But the heart can learn not to be thrown around by every wave. Suffering begins when desire becomes clinging, but peace begins when awareness enters the place where clinging used to rule. Awareness does not need to shout. It simply sees. It sees the grasping. It sees the fear beneath it. It sees the promise craving makes. It sees the disappointment that follows. It sees the body tighten. It sees the breath shorten. It sees the mind narrow. And through seeing, it creates space. Through space, there is choice. Through choice, there is freedom. So, when desire rises, do not rush to obey it, and do not rush to hate it. Sit with it long enough to understand it. Ask what it is asking from the world. Ask what it believes you cannot be without. Ask what fear makes it so urgent. Ask whether it is guiding you with wisdom or dragging you with thirst. Then return to the present. Feel the breath. Feel the body. Feel the life that is still here before the desire is fulfilled. Because this is the truth. Craving does not want you to know. You can be alive before you get what you want. You can be worthy before someone chooses you. You can be peaceful before everything is certain. You can be grateful before life becomes perfect. You can move forward without rejecting where you stand. You can love deeply without turning love into a cage. You can desire gently without letting desire become your master. The Buddha taught that suffering begins when desire becomes clinging, because clinging takes the open heart and turns it into a fist. It takes the flowing nature of life and tries to make it solid. It takes temporary things and asks them to become permanent refuge. It takes simple wanting and turns it into fear, identity, pressure, and dependence. But the same teaching also gives the way out. Open the fist. See clearly. Hold lightly. Let the breath return. Let life move. Let joy come without needing to own it. Let pain pass without needing to become it. Let desire rise and fall inside awareness without handing it the throne of your heart. And as the grip loosens, something beautiful begins. The present does not need to be forced into perfection. People do not need to become possessions. Pleasure does not need to last forever to be meaningful. Loss does not need to destroy the self. Wanting does not need to become suffering. Life can be touched, loved, received, and released. This is not the end of desire. It is the end of being ruled by desire. And in that freedom, the heart discovers a peace that clinging could never give. And once you see that impermanent pleasures are only passing lights, not the sun within you, a deeper question begins to rise. If pleasure keeps passing, if success keeps fading, if praise keeps losing its sweetness, if one desire keeps being replaced by another, why does the mind continue to chase? Why does it keep reaching for new forms, new feelings, new people, new places, new outcomes, new versions of life, yet still return to the same quiet restlessness? Why does the heart get what it wanted and still begin looking for the next thing almost immediately? This is where the hidden pattern of craving becomes easier to see. The mind does not chase because the next thing is always meaningful. Many times it chases because stillness feels unbearable. It chases because silence exposes the hunger underneath. It chases because the present moment asks for presence, and presence can feel difficult for a mind trained to escape. It chases because it has learned to confuse movement with healing, excitement with joy, and change with freedom. There is a tiredness that comes from working too much, and there is another tiredness that comes from wanting too much. The second one is harder to explain because you may not be doing anything with your body, yet inside, the mind is running. It runs toward the future. It runs away from discomfort. It runs into memories. It runs into fantasies. It runs into comparison. It runs into planning. It runs into fear. It runs into the next possible solution. And because it is always running, even rest does not feel restful. This is why a person can sit quietly and still feel exhausted. The body may be still, but the mind is shopping for another life. It looks at this moment and says, "Not enough." It looks at this body and says, "Not enough." It looks at this relationship, this work, this home, this progress, this amount of money, this season of life, and says, "Not enough." Then it begins searching for new forms. A form can be anything the mind turns into an object of hope, a new possession, a new body, a new face, a new relationship, a new identity, a new title, a new room, a new city, a new routine, a new spiritual idea, a new plan, a new dream. The mind says, if I can get this form, maybe the ache will end, and for a little while the form may bring excitement. It may bring relief. It may bring freshness. It may give the mind something to hold. But soon the freshness becomes familiar. The new becomes normal. The shine becomes ordinary. Then the mind says again, something else is missing. This is not because the form was always useless. It is because craving placed a burden on it that no form can carry. A new thing can decorate life, but it cannot end inner thirst. A new place can change your surroundings, but it cannot automatically quiet the mind that follows you there. A new person can bring warmth, but they cannot become the permanent cure for loneliness. A new achievement can open doors, but it cannot erase the habit of feeling incomplete. A new identity can feel powerful, but if it is built on craving, it will soon demand protection. The mind also chases feelings. Sometimes it wants the feeling of being desired, sometimes the feeling of being admired, sometimes the feeling of being safe, sometimes the feeling of being important, sometimes the feeling of being free, sometimes the feeling of being in control, sometimes the feeling of being above pain. It may not even want the object itself. It wants the feeling the object seems to promise. This is why someone may keep changing what they chase. Yet the emotional hunger remains the same. A person may think they want money, but beneath that, they may want the feeling of security. Another may think they want fame, but beneath that, they may want the feeling of being finally seen. Another may think they want a perfect relationship, but beneath that, they may want the feeling of never being abandoned. Another may think they want constant activity, but beneath that, they may want the feeling of not having to meet themselves. The surface desire changes, but the deeper thirst continues. The Buddha's wisdom helps us look beneath the surface. It asks us not only what we are chasing, but what feeling we hope the chase will give us. Because if we do not understand the feeling we are seeking, we will keep mistaking objects for answers. We will keep thinking the next form is the solution, when really the mind is trying to escape an inner wound, an old fear, or a deep discomfort with the present. This is why the mind keeps chasing new outcomes. Outcomes seem powerful because they belong to the future, and the future is easy to decorate. The mind can place all its hopes there. It can say, when this happens, I will be calm. When this person changes, I will be okay. When I reach that level, I will stop feeling behind. When I become successful, I will stop doubting myself. When the answer arrives, I will stop worrying. When life finally gives me proof, I will stop fearing. But an outcome is never as solid as the fantasy built around it. Before it arrives, it seems perfect because the mind has not yet had to live inside it. The future version has no daily responsibilities, no ordinary boredom, no new problems, no emotional shadows, no changing conditions. It is clean because it is imagined. But when the outcome arrives, it becomes part of real life. And real life always has texture. It always has new questions. It always has another edge. So the mind that expected final rest becomes disappointed. This is why people often feel confused after getting what they wanted. They thought arrival would end the chase. Instead, arrival creates a new starting point. The promotion comes, and now there is pressure to keep performing. The relationship comes, and now there is fear of losing it. The money comes, and now there is worry about protecting it. The recognition comes, and now there is pressure to remain admired. The change comes, and soon the mind adapts. The outcome becomes normal, and craving begins searching again. There is a name for this in ordinary life, getting used to what once felt exciting. But in Buddhist wisdom, this is part of the nature of conditioned things. Anything that depends on conditions will change when those conditions change. A feeling that depends on novelty will fade when the novelty becomes familiar. A happiness that depends on praise will shake when praise is absent. A peace that depends on control will collapse when uncertainty appears. A confidence that depends on success will weaken when failure comes. If the mind builds rest on changing conditions, rest will keep changing too. This does not mean you should stop having goals. It means you should stop asking goals to do the work of inner freedom. A goal can guide effort. It can create structure. It can help you grow. It can support your life. But if you believe a goal will finally make you complete, the goal becomes another form of craving. And even if you achieve it, the mind may simply ask, what next? This question is not always healthy ambition. Sometimes it is the sound of a heart that does not know how to arrive. To arrive does not mean your life is finished. It means your awareness is no longer absent from where you are. You can still grow, but you are not running away from yourself. You can still work, but you are not using work to prove your worth. You can still love, but you are not using love to avoid inner emptiness. You can still improve your life, but you are not treating the present as a failure. This is the difference between movement from wisdom and movement from craving. Movement from wisdom feels grounded. It has patience. It can breathe. It knows why it is moving. It can accept delay without turning delay into despair. It can receive progress without becoming arrogant. It can change direction without feeling destroyed. Movement from craving feels tight. It carries panic. It says, I must get there quickly or I am nothing. It cannot enjoy the path because the path is only valuable if it gives the desired result. It cannot tolerate uncertainty because uncertainty threatens the promise it has made to itself. The mind keeps chasing because it believes rest is located outside itself. This belief is ancient and deeply rooted. From childhood, many people learn that peace comes when someone approves, when danger leaves, when needs are met, when pain stops, when they perform well, when they are chosen, when they receive attention. Some of this is natural. A child needs care from outside. But as the person grows, the mind may continue searching outside for the inner safety it never fully developed. It may keep asking the world to become a parent, a shield, a mirror, a savior, a guarantee. Then every desire becomes heavier than it needs to be. The person does not simply want love. They want love to prove they are not abandoned. They do not simply want success. They want success to prove they are not worthless. They do not simply want comfort. They want comfort to prove they are safe forever. They do not simply want praise. They want praise to silence shame. They do not simply want change. They want change to erase the pain of being present with themselves. This is why chasing can feel so urgent. It is not always about the thing. It is about the meaning the mind attaches to the thing. If I get this, I am safe. If I get this, I am enough. If I get this, I am loved. If I get this, I have not wasted my life. If I get this, the past will hurt less. If I get this, I can finally stop running. But the thing cannot hold all that meaning. So when it arrives and fails to save the heart completely, the mind feels betrayed and begins searching for another form. Craving also survives by changing its face. If one object disappoints, craving does not admit defeat. It says, "That was not the right one. Try again. Try something bigger. Try something newer. Try something more exciting. Try someone different. Try a better version of the same thing." This is how the chase continues. The mind rarely questions the chasing itself. It only questions the object. It says, "I need a different pleasure, a different outcome, a different identity, a different place." But Buddhist wisdom gently asks, what if the deeper issue is not the object, but the restless thirst behind the object? This question can be uncomfortable because the chase often gives life a sense of drama. It gives the ego a story. It says, "I am becoming. I am almost there. I am close to happiness. I am one step away from peace." Without this chase, the mind may fear emptiness. It may ask, who am I if I am not trying to get somewhere? Who am I if I am not waiting for something to complete me? Who am I if I stop proving, pleasing, chasing, comparing, fixing, and becoming? That fear keeps many people busy. But busyness is not the same as aliveness. A person can be very busy and deeply asleep inside. They can chase one outcome after another without ever asking whether the chase is making them wiser, kinder, freer, or more awake. The Buddha was not impressed by movement alone. He pointed toward right effort, the kind of effort that reduces suffering, not the kind that decorates craving. Right effort does not feed the fire of endless wanting. It gently trains the mind to abandon what harms, cultivate what heals, and return to awareness. The mind keeps chasing feelings because it does not understand feelings. It treats them as commands. If desire arises, it obeys. If boredom arises, it escapes. If sadness arises, it distracts. If insecurity arises, it seeks validation. If fear arises, it tries to control. If loneliness arises, it grabs for connection, even unwise connection. But a feeling is not always an instruction. Sometimes it is only weather passing through the mind. It can be felt without being followed. It can be known without being turned into action. It can rise, change, and pass inside awareness. This is one of the most freeing lessons in Buddhist practice. You do not have to chase every feeling that appears. You do not have to fix every discomfort immediately. You do not have to feed every hunger. You do not have to obey every urge. You can sit with the wanting and watch it move. You can breathe through restlessness and discover that it is not as solid as it first seemed. You can notice boredom and see that beneath it may be a fear of stillness. You can notice loneliness and meet it with compassion instead of desperation. You can notice the urge for more and ask what enough would feel like in this moment. The untrained mind believes every empty feeling must be filled from the outside. The trained mind learns that some emptiness is not a hole to fill, but a space to understand. Sometimes the quiet ache inside is asking for attention, not another object. Sometimes restlessness is asking for presence, not stimulation. Sometimes the urge to chase is a sign that the heart has not yet learned how to sit gently with itself. This is why meditation can feel difficult at first. When you sit still, the mind's chasing becomes visible. You see how quickly it reaches for thought, memory, planning, fantasy, judgment, desire, irritation, and escape. You may think meditation is creating restlessness, but often it is only revealing what was already there. The mind has been running all day. Stillness simply allows you to hear the footsteps, and when you hear them, you may finally understand why rest has felt so far away. Rest is not only lying down. Rest is not only closing the eyes. Rest is not only taking a break from work. Real rest begins when the mind stops arguing with the present. Real rest begins when the heart no longer believes it must chase the next form, feeling, or outcome before it can be here. Real rest begins when awareness becomes more trustworthy than craving. But awareness takes practice. The mind has chased for so long that chasing feels normal. It may even call chasing ambition, love, discipline, healing, or self-improvement. Sometimes it is. But sometimes those words are used to hide the fact that the heart is running from itself. This is why honesty matters. You can ask, is this movement making me more awake or more restless? Is this desire rooted in wisdom or in fear? Am I moving towards something wholesome or escaping the discomfort of being here? Am I growing or am I trying to become someone who never has to feel human? The mind also keeps chasing because comparison keeps creating new desires. You may feel peaceful until you see someone else's life. Then suddenly your own life looks small. You may feel grateful until you see someone with more. Then your blessings lose their shine. You may feel content with your progress until you see someone moving faster. Then your path feels delayed. Comparison opens countless doors for craving. It shows the mind new forms to want, new outcomes to chase, new feelings to envy, new identities to build. But comparison is rarely honest. It shows you the outside of another person's life and asks you to judge the inside of your own. It shows you their moment of harvest and makes you despise your season of planting. It shows you their smile, their success, their beauty, their relationship, their comfort, but it does not show the hidden cost, the private fear, the old wounds, the responsibilities, the loneliness, the sacrifices, the uncertainty. Craving takes this incomplete picture and says, "There, that is where peace lives. Go chase it." So the mind runs after borrowed desires. It wants things not because they truly matter, but because someone else made them look like freedom. It builds a life out of imitation and then wonders why the heart still feels empty. Buddhist wisdom brings you back to direct seeing. What is actually wholesome for you? What reduces greed, hatred, and delusion in your heart? What makes you more compassionate, more steady, more awake? What supports peace without feeding vanity? What brings simplicity rather than more bondage? Without this kind of inquiry, the mind will keep chasing whatever the world presents as desirable. Today, it may chase attention. Tomorrow, luxury. Next week, status. Next month, beauty. Later, power. Then spiritual identity. Then emotional intensity. Then escape. The objects change, but the restlessness remains because the mind has not learned discernment. It has not learned to ask whether the chase leads to freedom or deeper dependence. There is another reason the mind keeps chasing. It fears ordinary life. Ordinary life can feel too quiet for a craving mind. Washing dishes, walking slowly, listening fully, eating without distraction, sitting with the breath, doing one task at a time, appreciating simple kindness. These things may appear small to a mind addicted to intensity, but in Buddhism the ordinary moment is not small. It is where awakening is practiced. It is where attention is trained. It is where craving is seen. It is where gratitude becomes real. The hungry mind wants fireworks. The wise heart learns to see the lamp already burning. The hungry mind wants a dramatic transformation. The wise heart notices the small release in one honest breath. The hungry mind wants a new life. The wise heart begins by fully entering this one. This does not mean your life cannot change. It means change becomes healthier when it grows from presence, not rejection. The mind keeps chasing because it believes peace will be found by adding more pleasure, more certainty, more recognition, more control, more options, more experiences, more proof, more stimulation, more becoming. But often peace begins by subtracting, less grasping, less comparison, less resistance, less self-punishment, less noise, less obedience to every craving, less belief in the thought that says, "I cannot rest yet." This subtraction is not loss, it is lightness. A room becomes peaceful not only by adding beautiful things, but by removing clutter. The heart is similar. When craving fills the heart with too many demands, even blessings have no space to land. You may be surrounded by good things and still feel nothing because the inner room is crowded with wanting. Letting go makes space for simple joy to be felt again. The chase also continues because the mind mistakes relief for freedom. When you satisfy a craving, there may be relief. The tension drops for a moment. The desire quiets. The body relaxes. The mind says, "See, this was the answer." But often what you experienced was not deep peace. It was only the temporary silence of a craving that has been fed. Soon another craving arises, then another. This is why relief can become addictive. The mind keeps creating tension and chasing release, mistaking the cycle for happiness. Freedom is different. Freedom is not needing to feed every craving before you can be calm. Freedom is being able to feel the urge without being owned by it. Freedom is knowing that a desire can be present without becoming your master. Freedom is discovering that the heart can survive an unmet want. This is powerful because much of the mind's panic comes from believing that unmet desire is unbearable. But when you sit with desire and do not immediately obey it, you learn something astonishing. It changes. It rises, peaks, softens, and passes. It was loud, but not permanent. It was urgent, but not always wise. Each time you see this, craving loses authority. The mind begins to understand that not every desire deserves a throne. Not every feeling deserves action. Not every outcome deserves your peace. Not every form deserves your identity. You become less reactive, less easily pulled, less hungry for the world to constantly entertain or reassure you. This is not dullness. It is maturity of attention. A mature mind can enjoy new forms without being trapped by them. It can welcome pleasant feelings without needing to repeat them endlessly. It can work toward outcomes without becoming spiritually homeless until they arrive. It can move through life with interest, but not desperation. It can meet change without turning every change into a personal crisis. This is what rest begins to feel like. Rest is not the absence of all desire. It is the absence of being dragged by desire. Rest is not having no future. It is not abandoning dreams. It is not refusing pleasure. It is not becoming cold. Rest is the quiet confidence that your peace does not have to be postponed until the next condition is satisfied. Rest is the ability to stand in the present without needing to escape it every moment. Rest is the softening of the belief that somewhere else, someone else, something else must arrive before you can be whole. The Buddha taught a path because he knew the chase would not end by accident. The mind does not naturally stop craving just because it becomes tired. Sometimes tired craving becomes even more desperate. It says, "I have suffered so long, I must find the thing now." But wisdom trains the mind differently. Right view helps you see the nature of impermanence. Right intention helps you move from renunciation, kindness, and harmlessness instead of hunger. Right speech, right action, and right livelihood help your outer life stop feeding inner agitation. Right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration help the mind become steady enough to see craving before it becomes suffering. This path is not punishment, it is medicine. It helps the mind stop running in circles. It teaches you to notice the beginning of the chase, not only the exhaustion at the end. It teaches you to catch the thought that says, "This will complete me." It teaches you to feel the body when craving tightens. It teaches you to return to breath before the mind builds another fantasy. It teaches you to choose what nourishes instead of what only stimulates. Over time, the mind discovers a quieter happiness. Not the happiness of getting everything it wants, but the happiness of not needing to chase everything it wants. Not the happiness of controlling every outcome, but the happiness of trusting your ability to meet life as it comes. Not the happiness of constant pleasure, but the happiness of being less enslaved by pleasure. Not the happiness of becoming impressive, but the happiness of becoming sincere. And from that sincerity, life becomes more vivid. Because when the mind stops running so much, it starts seeing. It sees the face of someone speaking. It hears the sound of rain. It tastes food more slowly. It feels the body from the inside. It notices the kindness that used to pass unnoticed. It recognizes that ordinary moments are not obstacles to life. They are life. It no longer needs every moment to become dramatic before it becomes worthy of attention. This is how the chase begins to end. Not through force, but through understanding. You see that new forms become old forms. New feelings become passing feelings. New outcomes become new conditions. None of them are wrong, but none of them can give final rest to a mind that refuses to be present. Rest is not hidden in the next object. It grows when craving is understood, when attention returns, when the heart stops demanding that life constantly becomes something else. So when the mind reaches again, pause gently. Do not condemn it. It is doing what it has practiced for years. But ask it kindly, what are you really seeking? Are you seeking this object, or are you seeking relief from yourself? Are you seeking this outcome, or are you seeking permission to rest? Are you seeking this feeling, or are you trying to escape a feeling you have not yet held with compassion? These questions are like bells calling awareness home. And when awareness returns, the chase loses some of its speed. You may still move forward, but now you move with eyes open. You may still desire, but now desire does not own your breath. You may still enjoy, but now enjoyment does not become addiction. You may still plan, but now the future does not swallow the present. You may still become, but now becoming does not require rejecting who you are right now. This is the rest the hungry mind has been seeking in the wrong places. It is not found by collecting endless forms, because forms change. It is not found by preserving pleasant feelings, because feelings move. It is not found by controlling outcomes, because outcomes depend on countless causes beyond your command. It is found by waking up from the spell that says the next thing will finally save you. The mind keeps chasing new forms, feelings, and outcomes without finding rest because craving keeps moving the finish line. Every time you arrive, it points farther. Every time you receive, it asks for more. Every time you taste sweetness, it demands permanence. Every time life becomes quiet, it calls quietness emptiness. But Buddhist wisdom invites you to stop running long enough to see that the finish line was never outside you. The rest you seek begins when the heart stops treating the present as a place to escape and begins to meet it as the only place where peace can breathe. And when the heart begins to see that peace can only breathe in the present, another quiet truth appears. The present is not always empty. The problem is that attachment covers it. It places one desire in front of your eyes, and suddenly the rest of life becomes invisible. You may still have breath, shelter, food, kindness, time, strength, chances, and small moments of mercy. But because the mind is holding tightly to one thing it wants, everything else fades into the background. This is one of the saddest ways suffering enters a person's life. Nothing has to be taken away for the heart to feel poor. Sometimes the blessing is still there. The love is still there. The body is still working. The morning is still opening. The small help is still being given. The quiet protection is still around you. But attachment makes the mind stare so hard at what it does not have that it loses the ability to notice what has not left. A person can be sitting in a safe room and still feel unsafe because the mind is attached to an outcome that has not arrived. A person can be loved by quiet people and still feel unloved because the mind is attached to one person's attention. A person can eat a simple meal and still feel deprived because the mind is attached to a richer table. A person can wake up with another day to live and still feel cheated because the mind is attached to a version of life it expected by now. This is how attachment makes blessings disappear. It does not erase them from life. It erases them from awareness. And what disappears from awareness often feels like it does not exist. This is why someone can say, "Nothing good ever happens to me," while standing inside many unnoticed good things. They do not mean to be ungrateful. They may not even be aware of what they are doing. Their attention has been captured. Attachment has taken the mind hostage and forced it to look in only one direction. It says, "Do not look at what is here. Look at what is missing. Do not feel what is supporting you. Feel what has disappointed you. Do not receive the ordinary gift. Wait for the special one." The Buddha understood that suffering grows when attention becomes trapped by craving and clinging. The mind does not see reality clearly when it is attached. It sees through hunger, and hunger changes what it sees. When the stomach is very hungry, even a small smell of food can become powerful. In the same way, when the heart is attached, the object of attachment becomes larger than life. It appears more important than everything else. It becomes the center of the inner world. Then all other blessings become small, dull, almost unreal. This can happen with love. If someone is attached to receiving affection in one exact form, they may miss all the other ways care is being shown. A parent may not say the perfect words, but they may still worry, provide, call, cook, check, or sacrifice quietly. A friend may not always be available, but they may still show loyalty in small ways. A partner may not love with dramatic speech, but may love through patience, presence, effort, and consistency. But attachment says, if love does not come in the form I crave, then love is absent. That belief makes the heart lonely, even around care. This can happen with success. A person may have made progress, learned skills, survived hardship, built discipline, helped others, and grown quietly over time. But if they are attached to a certain level of recognition, they may see all that progress as nothing. Because the world has not clapped loudly enough, they treat their effort as invisible. Because the result is not big enough, they ignore the strength it took to continue. Because someone else appears ahead, they forget how far they have come. Attachment makes the unfinished part of the journey insult the part that is already meaningful. This can happen with the body. A person may have legs that carry them, eyes that still see, hands that still serve, lungs that still breathe, and a heart that still beats without being asked. Yet, attachment to a perfect appearance, youth, strength, or comparison can make the living body feel like an enemy. The body becomes judged more than thanked. Every mirror becomes a courtroom. Every change becomes a threat. Every flaw becomes louder than function. Attachment turns the miracle of being alive into a list of complaints. This can happen with money. A person may not be rich, but they may have enough for today, enough to eat something, enough to sleep somewhere, enough to solve one problem, enough to keep moving. But attachment to a certain amount, a certain lifestyle, a certain image, or a certain feeling of security can make today's provision feel like nothing. The mind says, until I have more, I have nothing. And because more has no clear ending, gratitude remains delayed. This does not mean poverty, illness, loneliness, or hardship should be romanticized. Buddhist wisdom is not asking anyone to deny real difficulty. If something is painful, it is painful. If a need is unmet, wise action is necessary. If life is hard, compassion is needed. But even in hardship, attachment can add another layer of suffering by hiding whatever support still remains. It can make pain become the whole picture. It can make one missing thing swallow 10 present gifts. It can make the heart unable to breathe even when there is still something to hold. Awareness does not erase problems, it widens the view. When awareness returns, you may still see what is missing, but you also see what remains. You may still work for change, but you stop insulting the small mercies that help you survive today. You may still grieve what has not happened, but you also notice what has not abandoned you. You may still feel pain, but pain is no longer allowed to convince you that nothing good exists. This widening is part of freedom. Attachment narrows the view. Awareness widens it. Think of standing close to a wall. If your face is pressed against it, the wall becomes your whole world. You may forget there is sky behind you, ground beneath you, air around you, and space on every side. Attachment is like pressing the mind against one object. It makes one desire fill the entire inner screen. It can be one person, one mistake, one regret, one goal, one fear, one comparison, one disappointment. The closer the mind presses, the less it sees. This is why detachment is not coldness. It is stepping back enough to see the whole room again. It is not saying the wall does not exist. It is saying the wall is not the whole world. It is not denying the desire. It is refusing to let the desire blind you to life. It is not rejecting love, success, comfort, healing, or hope. It is allowing those things to exist without becoming the only thing your heart can see. The mind attached to one blessing often misses the blessing of not having certain burdens. Many people forget that peace is not only what arrives. Sometimes peace is what did not happen. The accident that did not occur, the sickness that did not come, the disaster that passed your door, the person who quietly protected you from a worse path, the delay that saved you from the wrong door, the rejection that kept you from a heavier sorrow. But attachment rarely notices protection because it is too busy mourning what it wanted. Sometimes grace looks like absence. And because attachment wants a specific presence, it fails to recognize that absence can also be mercy. This is difficult to accept because the attached mind trusts its own plans completely. It says, I know what should happen. I know who should stay. I know what should arrive. I know what will make me happy. I know the exact shape of my peace. But life is larger than the mind's plan. There are things you cannot see from where you stand. There are outcomes that look disappointing now, but later reveal hidden protection. There are blessings that arrive quietly because the loud thing you wanted would have consumed you. There are doors that close because what is behind them cannot carry your spirit well. Attachment does not allow this kind of trust. It says, if life does not give me what I asked for, life is against me. Wisdom says, maybe I do not yet see the whole pattern. This does not mean every disappointment is secretly pleasant. Some losses truly hurt, some doors close and leave real grief. Some people leave and create deep silence, but even then, attachment can make healing harder by making the missing thing the only thing worth seeing. It says, because this is gone, nothing remains. Because this failed, all is ruined. Because they did not choose me, I am not loved. Because I did not get that life, this life has no value. These conclusions are not reality. They are attachment speaking through pain. The heart must be treated gently when it is attached. You cannot simply command it to be grateful. Forced gratitude can become another form of violence against the self. True gratitude grows when awareness slowly returns. It begins when you stop demanding that the mind stare only at the wound. It begins when you place one hand on the pain and still allow your eyes to notice the light. It begins when you can say, yes, something hurts, and yes, something is still supporting me. This is a mature kind of gratitude, not loud, not fake, not used to deny sorrow. It does not say, I should not feel pain because I have blessings. It says, I can feel pain without becoming blind to blessings. That is very different. One shames the heart, the other steadies it. Attachment also hides blessings by making them too familiar. The mind gets used to what is constant. The bed that once felt like comfort becomes ordinary. The person who always checks on you becomes expected. The food that appears daily becomes unnoticed. The body that carries you becomes taken for granted. The peace that remains in your home becomes invisible because it does not create drama. The mind often notices what changes, not what faithfully stays. This is why some blessings are recognized only after they disappear. People often appreciate health after sickness. They appreciate quiet after chaos. They appreciate loyalty after betrayal. They appreciate ordinary days after loss. They appreciate someone's kindness after that person stops giving it. The blessing was not absent before. Awareness was absent. Attachment to more made enough look small. Buddhist practice trains the mind to notice before loss becomes the teacher. It teaches you to look at the simple things while they are still here. Not because you are afraid of losing them, but because you understand their preciousness. The breath is common, but it is not cheap. A quiet morning is simple, but it is not meaningless. A kind person may not be exciting, but their presence is not small. A body that functions imperfectly is still carrying a life. A day without disaster is not boring, it is a form of grace. The more you practice noticing, the more life begins to feel less empty. Not because life suddenly becomes perfect, but because awareness becomes less selective in a painful way. It stops looking only for what confirms lack. It begins to see support, texture, care, beauty, and possibility. The mind becomes less like a closed fist and more like an open window. This is why mindfulness is so powerful. Mindfulness returns you to direct experience before attachment tells its story. The story says, my life is incomplete because I do not have this. Direct experience says, breathing is happening, warmth is here, sound is here, a body is here, a chance is here, a small good is here. The story says, nothing is enough. Direct experience says, this sip of water is enough for this thirst. This breath is enough for this moment. This step is enough for this path. This kindness is enough to be received. The attached mind lives inside stories. Stories about what should have happened, what someone should have done, what life should look like, what success should mean, what love should feel like, what age should bring, what the future must prove. Some stories may contain truth, but when attachment controls them, They become prisons. They repeat until the heart forgets to look at what is actually here. Mindfulness interrupts the story. It does not always answer every question. It does not solve every problem immediately. But it brings you back from the mental movie into the living moment. And in the living moment, there is often more than the story allowed you to see. Attachment also makes blessings disappear by creating entitlement. The more the mind believes something belongs to it permanently, the less wonder it feels. What is received becomes expected. What is expected becomes ignored. What is ignored becomes appreciated only when threatened. This is why attachment weakens gratitude. It turns gifts into possessions. It says, "This person should be here. This comfort should continue. This support should remain. This opportunity should be mine. This day should obey me." But nothing in life is owed in the way attachment believes. Even the next breath is not personally guaranteed. This truth can sound frightening at first, but deeply understood, it becomes tender. It makes the heart softer. It helps you stop treating blessings as background furniture. It helps you say thank you with your attention, not only with your mouth. It helps you touch life more gently because you know it is passing. When you understand impermanence, blessings become brighter. Not because you cling to them, but because you stop sleeping through them. The sound of someone's voice becomes precious because voices do not last forever. A peaceful evening becomes precious because seasons change. A simple meal becomes precious because hunger exists somewhere. A normal day becomes precious because many people would pray for normal. The ordinary becomes sacred when the mind stops demanding that it become extraordinary first. Attachment often says, "I cannot enjoy this because it is not enough." Wisdom says, "I can enjoy this without pretending it is everything." That is the balance. You do not need to exaggerate blessings. You do not need to call small things big. You only need to let small things be fully seen. A cup of water does not need to be a palace to be a blessing. A loyal friend does not need to be perfect to be precious. A quiet day does not need to be exciting to be healing. A step forward does not need to be the final destination to be meaningful. When attachment is strong, it makes the mind impatient with small things. It wants the big answer, the dramatic change, the perfect sign, the complete healing, the final proof. It overlooks gradual growth because gradual growth does not satisfy urgency. It overlooks small kindness because small kindness does not satisfy hunger. It overlooks daily strength because daily strength does not impress the ego. It overlooks quiet safety because quiet safety does not feel like victory. But life is mostly made of small things. If the mind cannot receive small blessings, it will miss most of life. Big events come rarely. Ordinary moments come every day. The attached mind waits for fireworks and misses the candle. It waits for applause and misses the sincere voice. It waits for a miracle and misses the support already carrying it through the morning. It waits for life to become cinematic and misses the holiness of breathing without needing to perform. This is why contentment is a discipline, not the discipline of forcing yourself to accept less than you need, but the discipline of seeing what craving makes invisible. It is the discipline of returning attention to what is present. It is the discipline of thanking the quiet good before it becomes absent. It is the discipline of not letting one unmet desire define the entire day. It is the discipline of saying, yes, I am still growing, and yes, this moment still has value. Attachment makes simple blessings disappear because it teaches the mind to measure life by demand instead of presence. If the demand is unmet, the whole moment is judged as lacking. If the expectation is delayed, the whole day becomes disappointing. If the desired person is absent, all other love is ignored. If the dream is unfinished, all current progress is dismissed. This is not clear seeing. It is emotional narrowing. Buddhist wisdom invites emotional widening. It asks you to see causes and conditions. What had to happen for this breath to be here? What had to happen for this food to reach you? What had to happen for this person to care? What had to happen for your body to survive until today? What had to happen for you to have another chance to practice, learn, forgive, begin, or soften? When you trace the conditions behind ordinary blessings, they no longer look ordinary. They become part of a vast web of support. A simple meal is not just a meal. It contains soil, rain, labor, transport, hands, heat, time, and life. A message from a friend is not just words. It contains memory, concern, effort, and connection. A morning is not just another morning. It contains the fact that the body continued through the night. A quiet room is not just a space. It contains protection from storm, noise, threat, and exposure. Awareness reveals the hidden depth of what attachment flattens. This seeing does not make you childish or overly sentimental. It makes you awake. It makes you less wasteful with attention. It helps you understand that many things you call normal are actually fragile arrangements of countless conditions. And when you see this, gratitude becomes natural, not forced, not dramatic. Natural. The more grateful awareness becomes, the less attachment can dominate. Attachment feeds on the belief that life is mostly lack. Gratitude shows that life also contains support. Attachment says, nothing is enough. Gratitude says, this is not everything, but it is something, and something can be received. Attachment says, I will only be thankful when life obeys me. Gratitude says, I can be thankful without needing life to be perfect. Attachment says, I cannot rest until the missing thing arrives. Gratitude says, I can rest in what is here while still moving wisely. This is not easy for the human mind because craving has momentum. It has practiced absence for years. It has built roads toward dissatisfaction. It has learned to scan for what is wrong. So when you begin noticing blessings, the mind may resist. It may say, this is too small. This does not solve my problem. This does not give me what I want. This does not change the past. This does not guarantee the future. And in one sense, the mind is right. A small blessing may not solve everything, but it can still soften the heart. It can still return you to reality. It can still interrupt the lie that nothing good is present. A candle does not remove the whole night, but it changes how the night is held. When attachment hides blessings, the heart becomes harsh. It speaks to life with constant complaint. It looks at the body with criticism. It looks at loved ones with expectation. It looks at work with resentment. It looks at delays with anger. It looks at simple days with boredom. Over time, this harshness becomes a habit. The person begins to believe they are simply realistic, when they may actually be attached to disappointment as a way of seeing. But awareness can soften this. You can begin with one small practice. Ask, what is here that I would miss if it were gone? This question cuts through entitlement. It reveals the invisible gifts. You may miss the person you take for granted. You may miss the health you criticize. You may miss the quiet you call boring. You may miss the routine you resent. You may miss the small income, the simple room, the familiar road, the ordinary meal, the chance to try again. This question does not create fear when held wisely. It creates tenderness. Another practice is to notice the blessing without owning it. This is important because attachment can even attach to blessings once it sees them. It can say, now this must stay, now this must be mine, now this must never change. But gratitude with wisdom says, thank you for this while it is here. I receive it. I do not own it. I honor it. I do not control it. I let it teach me presence, not fear. This keeps gratitude clean. Simple blessings return to awareness when the mind stops demanding that life be different before it becomes worthy of love. You can love an imperfect morning. You can receive an imperfect kindness. You can thank an imperfect body. You can honor imperfect progress. You can find steadiness in an imperfect home. You can smile at an imperfect day. The attached mind waits for perfect conditions. The awakened mind learns to meet life in its unfinished form. And this is important because your whole life will always be unfinished in some way. There will always be something not yet solved, not yet healed, not yet understood, not yet achieved, not yet secure, not yet clear. If you cannot notice blessings until everything is finished, you may reach the end of life, having missed the life itself. Attachment will always find one more reason to postpone appreciation. Wisdom appreciates while still walking. This is how the heart becomes rich in a way craving cannot understand. Not rich because it has everything, but rich because it can see what is here. Rich because it can receive. Rich because it can be touched by simple things. Rich because it does not need every gift to be large before it becomes grateful. Rich because it does not allow one missing piece to erase the whole table. The Buddha's path brings us back to this clear seeing. It teaches that attachment is not only a strong emotion, it is a distortion of perception. It changes what the mind notices, values, ignores, and repeats. When attachment is present, the desired object becomes bright and everything else becomes dim. When awareness is present, life becomes balanced again. The desired thing may still be seen, but it no longer blinds the heart. This balance is freedom. You can want love and still notice friendship. You can want success and still honor progress. You can want healing and still thank the body for surviving. You can want more stability and still receive today's provision. You can want clarity and still rest in the breath. You can want change and still stop treating the present as worthless. This is not settling for a small life. This is refusing to let attachment steal the life already in your hands. Because that is what attachment does. It steals by hiding. It hides the good behind the desired. It hides the present behind the future. It hides support behind disappointment. It hides enough behind more. It hides ordinary grace behind dramatic expectation. It hides the quiet love around you behind the loud absence of one person. It hides today's strength behind tomorrow's fear. It hides the breath behind the story, but awareness gives things back. It gives back the breath. It gives back the body. It gives back the morning. It gives back the friend. It gives back the small kindness. It gives back the quiet room. It gives back the meal. It gives back the chance to begin again. It gives back the ability to say, not everything is as I wish, but not everything is empty. Not every desire is fulfilled, but not every blessing is absent. Not every wound is healed, but life is still offering places to soften. And as the heart learns this, craving loses some of its power. The mind no longer believes that joy is locked inside one missing thing. It begins to understand that joy often returns through attention. What you notice becomes part of your life. What you ignore becomes like a gift left unopened. Attachment leaves many gifts unopened. Awareness opens them. So look gently at the life around you, not with forced happiness, not with denial, not with pressure to be positive, but with honest eyes. What has been carrying you quietly? What have you stopped thanking because it has always been there? What blessing became invisible because it was not the blessing you demanded? What simple mercy did attachment make too small to notice? This is where simple joy begins to return, not as excitement, not as a loud celebration, but as a soft recognition. The life you have may not contain everything you want, but it contains more than attachment allows you to see. There is still breath. There is still awareness. There is still a path. There is still one moment that can be met fully. There is still one small good that does not need to be ignored. And when you begin to see the small good again, the present stops feeling completely barren. The heart stops starving in front of food. The mind stops calling every ordinary blessing worthless. You begin to understand that attachment did not make life empty. It only narrowed your vision. And as vision widens, gratitude becomes possible. As gratitude deepens, craving weakens. As craving weakens, joy returns quietly, not because life finally became perfect, but because awareness finally came home. And when awareness finally comes home, the heart begins to notice something very painful, but very freeing. The suffering was not always coming from the size of your life. Sometimes it was coming from the sentence craving kept adding to everything you had. You had a breath, but craving said, not yet. You had a chance, but craving said, not yet. You had love in some form, but craving said, not this kind. You had progress, but craving said, not enough. You had safety for today, but craving said, not until tomorrow is guaranteed. You had reasons to be grateful, but craving said, wait until life gives you more. This is how craving quietly feeds dukkha. It does not always destroy peace with a loud disaster. It feeds suffering by turning enough into not yet. It takes the moment you could have entered with gratitude and makes it feel delayed. It takes the life you could have touched with presence and makes it feel unfinished. It takes the blessings that could have softened you and makes them feel too small to count. There is a deep sadness in living this way, because the mind keeps postponing peace without realizing it. It believes it is being wise. It believes it is protecting you from settling. It believes it is pushing you toward better things. But beneath that push, something dangerous is happening. The mind is training itself to reject the present. It is learning to treat today as a place that does not deserve your full attention. It is learning to say, I will be happy later. I will breathe later. I will be grateful later. I will enjoy my life later. I will feel complete later. But later keeps moving. This is the quiet trap. Every time you arrive at a place you once called later, craving changes the conditions. The heart says, now can I rest? Craving says, not yet. There is still one more thing, one more improvement, one more answer, one more proof, one more achievement, one more healing, one more apology, one more sign that life is safe, one more person to love you correctly, one more version of yourself to become. And because there is always one more thing, the mind never truly bows to the moment in front of it. The Buddha called this dukkha, the unsatisfactory nature of life, when the mind is ruled by craving, clinging, and ignorance. Dukkha is not only obvious pain, it is also the unease that remains even when things are fine. It is the tightness behind wanting. It is the disappointment inside pleasure. It is the fear hidden inside attachment. It is the restlessness that says, this is not enough, even when there is no immediate danger. It is the feeling of sitting inside your own life and still feeling far from home. Craving feeds dukkha because it teaches the mind to distrust enough. Enough begins to look like failure. Enough begins to look like laziness. Enough begins to look like being left behind. Enough begins to look like a small life, so the person keeps reaching, not from wisdom, but from fear. They fear that if they say, this is enough for this moment, they will stop growing. They fear that contentment will make them weak. They fear that gratitude will make them accept less than they deserve. They fear that peace will steal their ambition. But true enough does not mean nothing can improve. Enough does not mean you stop caring. Enough does not mean you refuse growth, healing, work, or responsibility. Enough means the heart stops using incompleteness as a reason to reject life. Enough means you can stand in the middle of an unfinished path and still breathe. Enough means you can work for better without hating what is here. Enough means you can honor today's bread while still planting tomorrow's field. Craving cannot understand this balance. Craving thinks everything must be urgent. It thinks peace must be earned by controlling the future. It thinks worth must be proven by becoming more. It thinks joy must wait until the outside world finally matches the picture in the mind. So it turns the present into a waiting room. And the longer you live in that waiting room, the more your own life starts to feel distant. You wake up, but you are waiting for a better season. You eat, but you are waiting for a better body. You work, but you are waiting for a better title. You love, but you are waiting for a better response. You rest, but you are waiting for a better reason to feel calm. You survive a hard day, but instead of honoring your strength, craving says, "Not enough. You should have done more." This is how dukkha enters ordinary life. It makes the ordinary feel like a failure because it is not yet extraordinary. The word "not yet" can be useful when it is used with wisdom. A seed is not yet a tree. A student is not yet a master. A wound is not yet fully healed. A dream is not yet complete. There is nothing wrong with recognizing process, but craving poisons "not yet" by adding rejection. It does not simply say, "This is still unfolding." It says, "This has no value until it arrives." It does not simply say, "You are growing." It says, "You are not enough until growth is complete." It does not simply say, "Life is changing." It says, "This moment is unworthy because it is unfinished." That is where suffering grows. A person can be healing and still hate themselves for not being fully healed. That hatred is dukkha. A person can be improving and still feel ashamed because the improvement is slow. That shame is dukkha. A person can have enough for today and still feel panic because tomorrow is unknown. That panic is dukkha. A person can be surrounded by small blessings and still feel poor because craving has defined wealth as something always out of reach. That poverty of awareness is dukkha. Craving feeds dukkha by moving attention away from direct experience into constant judgment. Direct experience may say, "There is food here." Judgment says, "But it is not the food I wanted." Direct experience says, "There is progress here." Judgment says, "But it is not fast enough." Direct experience says, "Someone cares." Judgment says, "But not the person I crave." Direct experience says, "The body is breathing." Judgment says, "But the body is not perfect." Direct experience says, "This moment is livable." Judgment says, "But it is not the life I expected." When judgment becomes stronger than presence, enough disappears. This is why the hungry mind is rarely satisfied. It does not let anything arrive cleanly. Every gift is inspected for what it lacks. Every blessing is compared with a better version. Every moment is measured against an imagined standard. The mind says, "Yes, this is good, but it could be better. Yes, I have made progress, but others are ahead. Yes, I am loved, but not perfectly. Yes, I am safe today, but what about tomorrow? Yes, I have something, but it is not everything." The word "but" becomes the doorway through which dukkha enters. Gratitude says, "This is something." Craving says, "But not enough." Peace says, "This breath is here." Craving says, "But the future is unclear." Love says, "Receive what is being offered." Craving says, "But it is not exactly what you demanded." Wisdom says, "Keep walking with patience." Craving says, "But you should already be there." The mind that lives under craving cannot simply receive. It must reduce, compare, question, and postpone. And because of this, even good things become tasteless. A warm meal is eaten quickly because the mind is already elsewhere. A kind word is dismissed because it is not dramatic enough. A quiet day is wasted because nothing exciting happened. A small success is ignored because the bigger goal remains unfinished. A loyal person is overlooked because someone else did not choose you. A healthy part of the body is ignored because one flaw receives all the attention. A moment of peace is ruined because the mind asks how long it will last. This is how craving feeds dissatisfaction without needing anything terrible to happen. It simply teaches the mind to miss what is present. The Buddha's wisdom invites you to notice this pattern at the exact moment it begins. Not after the whole day has been lost to restlessness, not after the heart becomes bitter, not after the mind has chased another false promise. Notice it when the thought appears, not yet. Pause and ask, is this wise recognition, or is this craving refusing to receive? Is this thought helping me grow, or is it making me reject the only life I can actually live right now? Is it pointing to a real action, or is it feeding the feeling that I am incomplete? This question matters because craving often disguises itself as truth. It says, I am only being honest. Your life is not where it should be. You are not healed enough. You are not successful enough. You are not loved enough. You are not calm enough. You are not spiritual enough. You are not ready enough. You are not safe enough. Some of these thoughts may point to areas of growth, but craving adds cruelty. It uses truth like a weapon. Wisdom uses truth like a lamp. A lamp helps you see the next step. A weapon makes you bleed where you stand. When wisdom sees that something is not yet complete, it does not turn the present into an enemy. It says, this is where we are, and this is the next kind step. Craving says, this is where we are, and this is unbearable. Wisdom says growth takes time. Craving says time means failure. Wisdom says healing moves in layers. Craving says if you are not healed now, you are broken. Wisdom says the path is walked one step at a time. Craving says, unless you reach the end, the step means nothing. Do you see the difference? The same unfinished life can become a place of practice or a place of punishment, depending on how the mind relates to it. Dukkha grows when the mind cannot accept the unfinished nature of life. And life is always unfinished. There will always be something in progress, something uncertain, something healing, something aging, something beginning, something ending, something unclear, something not fully controlled. If you wait until everything is complete before you allow peace, you are asking life for something it cannot provide. You are asking a river to become a stone before you trust it. Life moves. Craving wants arrival without change. That conflict creates suffering. The mind says, I will be content when I finally reach a stable place. But every stable place contains movement. The new job becomes a daily responsibility. The new relationship becomes a living bond that needs patience. The new home becomes a place that needs care. The new body becomes a body that still changes. The new success becomes a platform for new pressure. The new certainty becomes outdated when life shifts. Nothing remains fixed in the way craving demands. So craving keeps saying not yet because it is looking for a kind of final satisfaction that conditioned things cannot give. This is why enough must be discovered inwardly, not as a fixed amount outside. If enough depends on a number, the number may keep changing. If enough depends on applause, the applause may fade. If enough depends on another person's mood, your peace will rise and fall with them. If enough depends on perfect health, aging will feel like betrayal. If enough depends on control, uncertainty will always feel like danger. But if enough becomes a way of seeing, then even imperfect moments can hold dignity. Enough as a way of seeing says, this moment is not everything, but it is not nothing. This breath is not the whole journey, but it is the doorway. This meal is not luxury, but it is nourishment. This progress is not completion, but it is movement. This love is not perfect, but it is care. This body is not flawless, but it is alive. This day is not dramatic, but it is a chance. This life is not finished, but it is still sacred. Craving hates this kind of seeing because it weakens the spell. The spell depends on making the present look worthless. If the present has value, craving loses some control. If today can be received, tomorrow is no longer worshipped. If enough can be felt in one breath, more no longer rules the heart completely. If small blessings can be tasted, the mind becomes less desperate for large promises. This is not a call to live without direction. It is a call to stop living in spiritual debt. Many people feel as if they owe life a better version of themselves before they can be kind to who they are now. They think they must earn the right to rest, earn the right to breathe, earn the right to feel joy, earn the right to be grateful, earn the right to feel worthy. Craving creates a never-ending debt, and no payment is enough. You achieve one thing, and the debt remains. You improve one part of yourself, and the debt remains. You receive love, and the debt remains. You change your life, and the debt remains. Why? Because the creditor is craving, and craving does not want final payment. It survives by keeping you owing. It survives by saying, "Not yet." Buddhist wisdom cancels this false debt by bringing you back to what is real. You do not need to become perfect before you can be present. You do not need to own everything before you can be grateful. You do not need to control tomorrow before you can breathe today. You do not need to receive every apology before you can begin healing. You do not need to be chosen by everyone before you can stop abandoning yourself. You do not need to finish the path before you can honor the step. This is where the heart begins to soften. It realizes that peace was not being withheld by life as much as it was being postponed by craving. It realizes that dukkha was being fed by the belief that the present must become different before it can be touched. It realizes that the word enough is not a prison. It is a resting place. Still, the mind may resist. It may say, "If I accept enough, I will stop wanting better." But acceptance and resignation are not the same. Resignation is heavy. It says, "Nothing can change, so why try?" Acceptance is awake. It says, "This is what is here, and from here I can respond wisely." Resignation collapses. Acceptance stands. Resignation carries bitterness. Acceptance carries clarity. Resignation gives up on life. Acceptance stops fighting reality long enough to move with wisdom. Craving often pretends that only dissatisfaction creates growth. It says, "You must be unhappy with yourself to improve. You must hate your current life to build a better one. You must feel behind to move forward. You must keep comparing to stay motivated." But this kind of growth creates more dukkha because it is rooted in inner violence. You may move, but you move with a whip at your back. You may achieve, but you do not feel free. You may improve, but you remain afraid of being ordinary. There is another kind of growth rooted in care, growth rooted in clarity, growth rooted in devotion to what is wholesome. You can care for your body because it is worthy of care now, not because you hate it. You can build a better life because life is precious now, not because the present is worthless. You can heal because your heart deserves peace now, not because you are unacceptable while wounded. You can practice because awareness matters now, not because you are spiritually behind. This kind of growth does not feed dukkha, it weakens it. The difference lies in the inner voice. Craving says "not yet," and makes the heart feel late. Wisdom says "not complete, but still worthy." Craving says "more," because this is nothing. Wisdom says "continue," because this matters. Craving says "hurry, or you will fail." Wisdom says "walk steadily and do not abandon the breath." Craving says "you cannot rest until the outcome is secured." Wisdom says rest is part of walking well. Many people are not tired because they have too little. They are tired because nothing they have is allowed to be enough. Even rest is not enough rest. Progress is not enough progress. Love is not enough love. Time is not enough time. Success is not enough success. Healing is not enough healing. Every good thing is placed before the court of craving and declared insufficient. So the heart keeps laboring under a judge that never releases it. Mindfulness is how you begin to leave that courtroom. When the thought comes, "This is not enough," mindfulness does not instantly argue. It observes. It feels the body. It notices the tightness in the chest, the leaning forward, the small contraction around the heart. It listens to the thought without becoming it. Then it looks at the present with fresh eyes. What is actually here? What is the mind adding? What is needed now? What is being dismissed? What would be wise action and what would only be restless chasing? This simple inquiry interrupts the automatic feeding of dukkha. Instead of pouring more belief into craving, you bring awareness. Instead of obeying the sentence, "not yet," you ask whether it is true. Sometimes the answer will be, yes, something needs care. Yes, a real change is needed. Yes, a boundary must be set. Yes, a step should be taken. But even then, wisdom does not require self-rejection. It can act without poisoning the present. Other times, the answer will be, nothing is truly missing in this moment except permission to receive it. The tea is warm, but I was not tasting it. The room is quiet, but I was not trusting it. The person is kind, but I was not noticing it. The body is tired, but I was demanding more from it. The day is simple, but I was calling simplicity empty. The breath is here, but I was chasing a future breath. This recognition is gentle but powerful. It shows that dukkha is often fed by attention moving in the wrong direction. Craving sends attention toward lack. Awareness returns attention to life. Craving says, "Look at the gap." Awareness says, "Also see the ground." Craving says, "Look at what has not arrived." Awareness says, "Also see what is carrying you until then." Craving says, "This is not enough." Awareness says, "Enough for this breath may be enough for now." The phrase "for now" is important. It keeps contentment alive without making it rigid. Enough for now does not mean enough forever. It does not deny future needs. It simply frees the heart from turning this moment into an emergency when it is not one. Enough for now can calm the nervous system. Enough for now can bring the mind back from panic. Enough for now can let the body rest. Enough for now can stop craving from turning every unfinished thing into a crisis. The hungry mind does not like for now because it wants final guarantees. But life gives very few final guarantees. It gives moments. It gives breaths. It gives chances. It gives lessons. It gives meetings and partings. It gives conditions that shift. When you learn to receive enough for now, you stop demanding that this moment solve the whole future before you can be present. This is part of the freedom the Buddha pointed toward. Not a life where nothing difficult happens, but a mind that stops adding unnecessary suffering to what happens. Pain may come, but craving does not have to turn pain into identity. Desire may arise, but craving does not have to turn desire into slavery. Progress may be incomplete, but craving does not have to turn incompletion into shame. Blessings may be simple, but craving does not have to turn simplicity into emptiness. Dukkha is fed whenever the mind says life must be other than it is before it can be met. Dukkha weakens whenever the mind learns to meet life clearly, even while responding wisely. This is why the teaching is both deep and practical. You can practice it in the smallest moments. When eating, notice whether the mind is already reaching for the next bite before tasting this one. When listening, notice whether the mind is waiting to speak instead of hearing. When resting, notice whether the mind is calling rest unproductive. When working, notice whether the mind is saying your effort means nothing unless the final result comes quickly. When receiving kindness, Notice whether the mind rejects it because it is not from the exact person you wanted. Every one of these moments reveals how craving turns enough into not yet, and every one of these moments can become a doorway back. You come back by naming the craving softly. This is wanting. This is comparing. This is postponing. This is the mind refusing enough. This is the heart afraid that peace will make it stop growing. This is the old habit of waiting for life to become perfect. Naming creates distance. Distance creates choice. Choice creates freedom. Then you return to the body. The body is always in the present, even when the mind has traveled far away. Feel the breath entering. Feel the breath leaving. Feel the weight of the body. Feel the contact with the ground. The body does not need a perfect future to breathe now. It does not need applause to beat the heart. It does not need the whole path to be visible before taking one step. The body teaches enough in a very quiet way. One breath at a time, one heartbeat at a time, one moment at a time. Then you receive one thing, not everything, just one thing, one sound, one warmth, one kindness, one color, one sign of support, one place where life is not against you, one simple blessing that craving had pushed aside. This practice may seem small, but it retrains perception. It teaches the mind that life is not only lack. It teaches the heart that not yet is not the whole truth. Over time, this changes how you live. You stop waiting for dramatic permission to be at peace. You stop treating your life as if it begins only after the next achievement. You stop making your joy depend entirely on conditions that keep shifting. You stop allowing craving to turn every blessing into a disappointment by comparing it with something bigger. You stop believing the cruel thought that says you are always late to your own life. You begin to arrive. Arriving does not mean all desires vanish. It means desire no longer has the power to exile you from the present. Arriving means you can say, I am still learning, but I am here. I am still healing, but I am here. I am still working, but I am here. I am still waiting for some answers, but I am here. I do not have everything, but I am here. Life is not complete, but I am here. And because I am here, this moment can be lived, not merely endured. This is the opposite of dukkha's quiet feeding. Dukkha grows when life is endured as a waiting room. Peace grows when life is entered as practice. The same day can become different when awareness changes. A simple morning can become a return. A small meal can become gratitude. An unfinished dream can become patience. A delay can become humility. A wound can become compassion. A breath can become refuge. Craving says none of this counts until more arrives. Wisdom says this counts because it is life. And perhaps this is the great turning point. You stop letting craving decide what counts. Craving only counts the dramatic, the desired, the impressive, the pleasurable, the future, the complete. Wisdom counts the breath, the effort, the kindness, the lesson, the restraint, the quiet healing, the honest step, the moment of awareness, the small good that keeps the heart from closing. When wisdom decides what counts, life becomes less poor. This does not make you naive. It makes you present. It does not stop you from acting. It makes your actions cleaner. It does not deny sorrow. It stops sorrow from erasing everything else. It does not destroy desire. It stops desire from becoming a tyrant. It does not make every moment pleasant. It makes every moment workable. That is a deep freedom. Craving quietly feeds dukkha by turning enough into not yet because it teaches the heart to live under constant postponement. It makes the present feel unworthy. It makes blessings feel incomplete. It makes growth feel too slow. It makes rest feel undeserved. It makes ordinary life feel like a delay before real life begins. But Buddhist wisdom gently breaks this spell. It shows that enough is not the end of the path. Enough is the peace that allows you to walk the path without hating every step. So when the mind says, "Not yet," listen carefully. Sometimes it may be pointing to a wise step, but many times it is only craving trying to steal another moment. Do not hand it the whole day. Return to what is here. Return to the breath. Return to the simple good. Return to the unfinished life that is still worthy of tenderness. Return to enough, not as a place where growth dies, but as the place where suffering stops being fed. Because the heart does not find peace by waiting for craving to finally be satisfied. Craving has no final satisfaction. The heart finds peace when it stops believing that every present blessing must be dismissed until a larger one arrives. And in that quiet shift, dukkha begins to weaken. The sentence "not yet" loses its throne. The word "enough" becomes warm again. And the life you already have, imperfect, unfinished, and still unfolding, begins to feel less like a waiting room and more like a sacred place where awakening can begin. And when the word "enough" becomes warm again, the heart begins to notice the deeper illusion that made enough feel impossible in the first place. It was not only craving saying, "Get more." It was the mind believing there was a fixed self inside you that could finally be completed by getting more, a self that must be praised, protected, improved, defended, admired, satisfied, and made safe forever, a self that feels unfinished because it keeps mistaking passing experiences for who it is. This is where Buddhist wisdom goes beneath ordinary desire. It does not only ask why you want more, it asks, who is the one that feels incomplete? Who is the one that believes peace will come after more success, more love, more beauty, more respect, more control, more certainty, more pleasure, more becoming? When you look closely, you may find that this solid self you have been trying so hard to complete is not as solid as it feels. It is built from moving parts, changing experiences, and temporary impressions that the mind gathers and calls me. The Buddha taught about the 5 aggregates to help us see this clearly: form, feeling, perception, mental formations, and consciousness. These are not distant ideas meant only for monks in silence. They are happening in you right now. They are the body you identify with, the feelings you chase, the labels you believe, the thoughts and habits that push you, and the awareness that knows experience as it appears. Together, they create the strong impression of a person who must always become more to finally be okay. But each aggregate changes. The body changes, feelings change, perceptions change, thoughts change. Awareness shifts from one object to another. Nothing in this collection stays still long enough to become a permanent self. Yet the mind takes this flowing river and says, "This is me, this is mine, this is what I am." Then craving enters and says, "Because this self is incomplete, it must get more. More pleasure for the body, more pleasant feelings for the heart, more favorable labels for the mind, more powerful thoughts, more experiences to confirm its identity, more proof that it exists, matters, and is safe." This is how the illusion begins. The first aggregate is form, the body and all physical things. The body is the part of the self that feels easiest to believe in because it is visible. You can touch it, you can see it in the mirror. You can feel its hunger, tiredness, pain, warmth, and movement. Because the body feels so close, the mind says, "This is me." Then craving says, "If this body is me, it must be made perfect, protected from aging, compared with other bodies, decorated, controlled, and constantly improved." From this belief, so much suffering grows. The body becomes a project that is never complete. If it is young, the mind fears losing youth. If it is aging, the mind mourns what has changed. If it is healthy, the mind fears sickness. If it is sick, the mind feels betrayed. If it is admired, the mind becomes attached to admiration. If it is criticized, the mind feels wounded at the center of identity. A changing body is asked to carry an unchanging self-image, and this creates pain. The body is precious, but it is not a permanent self. It is made of food, water, breath, heat, movement, rest, cells, bones, blood, and countless conditions. It has been changing since the day you were born. The body you had as a child is gone. The body you had years ago is gone. Even today's body is not fixed. It is breathing, digesting, aging, repairing, weakening, strengthening, responding, and shifting. Yet Craving says, "Make this form enough so I can finally feel complete." But form cannot complete you, because form is never finished. The body needs care, not worship. It needs kindness, not hatred. It needs wise attention, not identity. When you believe the body is the whole self, every bodily change feels like a personal failure. But when you see the body as form, as a living process, you can care for it without being trapped by it. You can wash it, feed it, rest it, move it, protect it, and thank it, without demanding that it become a permanent source of worth. Craving, however, does not want this gentle relationship. It wants the body to become a guarantee. It says, if the body looks right, you will be loved. If the body feels strong, you will be safe. If the body stays young, you will not lose value. If the body is admired, you will finally matter. But no body can keep all those promises. This is why attachment to form creates endless more beauty, more strength, more youth, more comfort, more pleasure, more protection from discomfort. The self built on form is always afraid, because form is always changing. The second aggregate is feeling. In Buddhist teaching, feeling does not mean emotion only. It means the basic tone of experience, pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. Something touches the senses, and immediately the mind feels it as enjoyable, painful, or ordinary. A kind voice feels pleasant. A harsh word feels unpleasant. A plain wall may feel neutral. A sweet taste feels pleasant. A body ache feels unpleasant. A normal breath may feel neutral until mindfulness makes it vivid. This simple movement becomes the root of much craving. Pleasant feeling arises, and the mind says, more. Unpleasant feeling arises, and the mind says, remove it. Neutral feeling arises, and the mind says, boring, give me something else. From morning to night, the mind is pushed and pulled by these tones. It chases pleasant feelings, resists unpleasant ones, and ignores neutral ones. Then it builds a self around this chase. I am the one who needs pleasure. I am the one who must avoid pain. I am the one who cannot stand emptiness. I am the one who must feel good before life is acceptable. But feelings are not a fixed self. They arise because of contact. Something is seen, heard, touched, remembered, tasted, smelled, or thought, and a feeling tone appears. Then it changes. The pleasant becomes less pleasant. The unpleasant softens or shifts. The neutral becomes pleasant when attention deepens, or unpleasant when boredom grows. Feelings are weather, not identity. Yet the mind treats them like commands from the center of who you are. This is why craving feels so convincing. It rides on pleasant feeling and says, this is what I need. It rides on unpleasant feeling and says, this must not be here. It rides on neutral feeling and says, life is empty. But when you look closely, feeling is only arising and passing. It does not say anything final about you. A sad feeling does not mean you are a sad self. A lonely feeling does not mean you are an abandoned self. A pleasant feeling does not mean you have found permanent peace. A restless feeling does not mean your life is wrong. Feeling is an experience, not a ruler. The self that must always get more is often built from addiction to pleasant feeling. It says, I am only okay when I feel good, but no one feels good all the time. The body changes. The mind changes, circumstances change. If your self depends on pleasant feeling, you will feel threatened by every difficult mood, every quiet day, every ordinary hour, every moment that does not entertain you. Then life becomes a constant search for stimulation, more sweetness, more attention, more excitement, more distraction, more comfort, more escape. Buddhist wisdom does not ask you to hate pleasant feeling. It asks you to know it as feeling. When sweetness comes, know sweetness. When pain comes, know pain. When neutrality comes, know neutrality. The moment feeling is known clearly, it loses some power to create identity. You stop saying, "This feeling is me." You begin saying, "This feeling is present." That small shift changes everything. What is present can change. What is me feels like something that must be defended. The third aggregate is perception. Perception is the mind's labeling power. It recognizes, names, interprets, compares, and gives meaning. You see a face, and perception says friend, stranger, enemy, attractive, untrustworthy, important, ordinary. You see your home, and perception says safe, small, disappointing, familiar, not enough. You see your reflection, and perception says beautiful, aging, flawed, acceptable, unacceptable. You hear words, and perception says praise, insult, rejection, approval, disrespect. Perception is useful. Without it, you could not navigate life. But perception is not always truth. It is shaped by memory, culture, fear, desire, wounds, habits, and comparison. Two people can look at the same situation and perceive completely different meanings. One sees delay as failure, another sees delay as preparation. One sees silence as rejection, another sees silence as rest. One sees a simple life as poverty, another sees it as peace. Perception colors the world, then the mind forgets it is seeing through color. This is how the illusion of self becomes stronger. Perception labels experiences, then says, "This is who I am. I am successful. I am ignored. I am behind. I am special. I am unwanted. I am better. I am worse. I am damaged. I am chosen. I am ordinary. I am incomplete." Once the label sticks, craving begins to serve it. If the mind believes I am behind, it craves more achievement. If it believes I am unwanted, it craves more attention. If it believes I am superior, it craves more proof. If it believes I am damaged, it may even cling to pain because pain has become familiar identity. Perception turns life into a story, and craving tries to improve the story endlessly. It says, "I need more evidence that I am worthy, more signs that I am loved, more proof that I am safe, more symbols that I am important, more victories to erase the label of failure, more admiration to protect the label of success, more control to avoid the label of helplessness." The self created by perception is hungry because labels are unstable. They need constant confirmation. But perception changes. The thing you once called a disaster may later become a lesson. The person you once idealized may later appear human. The rejection you once thought destroyed you may later reveal protection. The simple life you once dismissed may later feel like peace. The body you once criticized may later be seen with gratitude. If perception can change, how can it be a permanent self? Seeing perception clearly weakens craving. You begin to question the labels that create hunger. Is this truly not enough, or has perception named it small? Am I truly behind, or am I comparing two different paths? Am I truly unloved, or am I attached to one form of love? Is this moment truly empty, or has my mind labeled quietness as lack? Is this body truly an enemy, or has perception been trained by harsh standards? Each question loosens the illusion. The fourth aggregate is mental formations. These are the thoughts, intentions, reactions, habits, impulses, fears, plans, memories, judgments, and emotional patterns that shape how you respond to life. This aggregate is very powerful because it creates the momentum of personality. It is the part of you that says, I always react this way. I always want this. I always fear that. I always chase this kind of person. I always compare. I always overthink. I always need control. Because the patterns repeat, the mind assumes they are a fixed self. But mental formations are conditioned. They were built by causes. Your upbringing, your wounds, your culture, your choices, your fears, your pleasures, your repeated thoughts, your environment, your survival strategies, and your past actions all helped shape them. A habit may feel like you, but it is still a habit. A fear may feel like truth, but it may be learned. A craving may feel like identity, but it may be a repeated pathway in the mind. This is freeing because what is conditioned can be understood, softened, and transformed. If anger were truly the self, it could never change. If craving were truly the self, liberation would be impossible. If fear were truly the self, courage could never grow. But because these formations arise through causes, new causes can weaken them. Mindfulness, wisdom, kindness, restraint, right effort, and repeated awareness can create different patterns. Craving uses mental formations to keep the illusion alive. It repeats the same inner messages until they feel personal. You need more. You are not safe yet. You are not enough yet. You must become more. You must get approval. You must not lose control. You must avoid pain at all costs. You must hold this person. You must protect this image. You must prove yourself. These thoughts may appear so often that the mind calls them me. But Buddhist wisdom asks you to see them as formations, not commands. A thought can be known. An impulse can be known. A fear can be known. A plan can be known. A craving can be known. If it can be known, then awareness is larger than it. This does not mean the thought disappears instantly, but it stops being the whole sky. It becomes a cloud, maybe a strong cloud, maybe a dark cloud, maybe a repeated cloud, but still a cloud. When you stop mistaking every mental formation for self, you stop obeying every demand for more. The fifth aggregate is consciousness. Consciousness is the knowing of experience through the senses and the mind. Seeing consciousness knows sights. Hearing consciousness knows sounds. Smelling consciousness knows smells. Tasting consciousness knows tastes. Body consciousness knows touch. Mind consciousness knows thoughts, memories, images, and ideas. Consciousness is the stream in which experiences appear. Because consciousness is always present in some form while you are awake, the mind may assume there is a solid watcher behind everything. It says, I am the one seeing, hearing, thinking, wanting, remembering. But even consciousness changes according to conditions. Seeing depends on the eye and visible form. Hearing depends on the ear and sound. Thought consciousness depends on mental objects. In deep sleep, ordinary knowing changes. Under stress, consciousness feels narrow. In meditation, it may become spacious. In anger, it becomes hot and focused. In calm, it becomes clear. It is a stream, not a fixed owner. When consciousness contacts experience, the other aggregates begin to operate. Form is known. Feeling arises. Perception labels. Mental formations react. Then the mind says, I am having this experience. Soon it says, I need more experience to become complete. More sights, more sounds, more tastes, more touches, more thoughts, more stories, more memories, more spiritual states, more emotional highs. Even consciousness becomes a field where craving seeks more. This is why the self feels continuous, even though everything is changing. The aggregates work together quickly. A sight appears, feeling responds, perception labels, formations react, consciousness knows, and the mind ties it together into a story of me. This happens so fast that it feels like a solid self is standing behind everything. But in deep observation, you begin to see a process, not a permanent owner. For example, someone looks at a message that has not been answered. Form appears, the phone screen. Feeling arises, unpleasant tightness. Perception labels, they are ignoring me. Mental formations react. Fear, memory, anger, the urge to check again, the thought that you are not valued. Consciousness knows the whole experience. Then the mind says, I am rejected. From that sense of self, craving appears. I need a reply. I need proof. I need reassurance. I need control. I need more attention to feel okay. But what really happened? A screen was seen, a feeling arose, a label appeared, old patterns reacted, awareness knew it. The solid rejected self was constructed from moving parts. If mindfulness enters, the process can be seen before it becomes suffering. You can say, there is unpleasant feeling, there is a perception of rejection, there is fear, there is craving for reassurance, but I do not have to become the story completely. This is not cold analysis, it is mercy. It gives you space around the pain. It stops one moment from becoming your whole identity. Another example, you see someone else living a life you desire. Form appears, their image, their home, their relationship, their success. Feeling arises, unpleasant lack or pleasant longing. Perception labels, their life is better, mine is behind. Mental formations react, envy, shame, ambition, self-criticism, fantasy. Consciousness knows the experience. Then the mind says, I am not enough. Craving says, I must get more to become someone valuable. Again, a self has been built from a chain of experiences. If you do not see the chain, you suffer inside the conclusion. If you see the chain, you can question it. Is this perception complete? Is this feeling permanent? Are these thoughts kind or useful? What old wound is being touched? What desire is being fed? What blessing is being hidden? The illusion weakens when the process becomes visible. The five aggregates create the illusion of a self that must always get more because none of them feels stable on its own. Form changes, so the self seeks more physical security. Feeling changes, so the self seeks more pleasure. Perception changes, so the self seeks more favorable labels. Mental formations change, so the self seeks stronger identity and control. Consciousness changes, so the self seeks more experiences to keep itself feeling real. Craving feeds on this instability. It says, because everything is shifting, you must gather more, hold more, become more, prove more. But gathering more does not solve the instability because the gathered things also become part of the changing aggregates. The new possession becomes form that ages, breaks, or loses excitement. The new pleasure becomes feeling that fades. The new status becomes perception that must be defended. The new identity becomes mental formation that can be threatened. The new experience becomes consciousness that passes. So the self that seeks solidity in changing things remains restless. The Buddha's teaching of not-self is not saying you do not exist in any practical way. You still have a name, a body, responsibilities, relationships, choices, and consequences. It is saying that what you call self is not a fixed, independent, permanent essence that can be completed by possession. It is a process, a flow, a gathering of conditions. When this is seen, craving loses its deepest argument. It can no longer say, you must get more to complete the permanent self, because no such fixed self can be found. This may sound frightening to the ego, but it is deeply peaceful to the heart. If the self is not fixed, you do not have to defend every old identity. You do not have to remain loyal to every craving, You do not have to become a finished image. You do not have to carry every label as a life sentence. You do not have to treat every feeling as truth. You do not have to turn every bodily change into a crisis. You do not have to gather more and more proof of who you are. You can live more lightly. Living lightly does not mean living carelessly. It means engaging life without turning every experience into self. Pain can be pain without becoming my permanent tragedy. Success can be success without becoming my eternal identity. Beauty can be beauty without becoming my worth. Failure can be failure without becoming my definition. Desire can be desire without becoming my master. Thought can be thought without becoming my truth. Feeling can be feeling without becoming my command. This is the beginning of freedom from the self that must always get more. A hungry self is never satisfied because it is built from movement and then demands stillness from the world. It says, make me stable, make me permanent, make me secure, make me admired, make me complete. But the world cannot make a changing process into a fixed possession. The more the mind tries, the more anxious it becomes. It must keep checking, comparing, defending, improving, collecting, and controlling. The self becomes like a house built on water, always needing more support because the foundation keeps moving. Buddhist wisdom does not try to build a harder self on top of the water. It teaches you to understand the water. It teaches you to see change as change. It teaches you to stop demanding permanence from what is not permanent. It teaches you to stop calling every passing aggregate mine in the deepest sense. When the grip on mine loosens, the demand for more also softens. Mine is one of the heaviest words in the mind. My body, my feeling, my image, my pain, my success, my failure, my story, my desire, my status, my fear, my future, my control. Some practical ownership is needed in daily life, but psychological ownership creates suffering when it hardens. The more tightly you say mine, the more afraid you become, because what is mine can be lost, changed, criticized, threatened, or taken. The stronger the ownership, the stronger the fear. Seeing the aggregates weakens this fear. The body is cared for, but not worshipped as permanent. Feelings are known, but not obeyed as identity. Perceptions are used, but questioned. Mental formations are observed, but transformed. Consciousness is respected, but not turned into an eternal controller. Life continues, but the grip softens, and when the grip softens, the need for more becomes less desperate. This is why mindfulness must be intimate. It is not only sitting quietly, it is noticing how the self is being made moment by moment. When irritation arises, notice how quickly the mind says, I am angry, they disrespected me, I must defend myself. When desire arises, notice how quickly the mind says, I need this, this will make me happy, I cannot rest without it. When shame arises, notice how quickly the mind says, I am not enough, I must become more. When praise arises, notice how quickly the mind says, I am important, I must keep this feeling alive. Each moment shows the construction of self, and each moment of seeing offers release. You do not have to destroy the self. You only need to stop being deceived by its solidity. In daily life, you can still say I and me. You can still care for your needs. You can still make wise plans. You can still love people. You can still protect your body. You can still learn and grow. But inwardly, there is more space. You know that the I you speak of is a useful convention, not a permanent possession. This humility brings peace. The illusion of a self that must always get more also creates spiritual craving. This is subtle. The mind may begin craving not only money, love, beauty, or success, but also spiritual identity. It wants to be more awakened, more peaceful, more wise, more pure, more special, more advanced. It compares its practice. It turns meditation into achievement. It turns insight into pride. It turns letting go into an image. The self survives by wearing spiritual clothing. Buddhist wisdom warns us gently here. Even the desire to become someone free can become another form of becoming. The path is not about creating a superior self. It is about seeing through the clinging that creates suffering. If practice becomes another way to say, "I am not enough yet," then craving has entered the temple. True practice is sincere, patient, humble. It does not use wisdom to decorate the ego. It uses wisdom to soften the ego's grip. This matters because craving for more can hide inside noble words. More healing, more purpose, more growth, more wisdom, more discipline, more transformation. These can be wholesome when guided by clarity, but they can also become another whip. The 5 aggregates keep creating the feeling of a self that is spiritually unfinished, and craving says, get more teachings, more states, more signs, more proof. But freedom is not collected like objects. It is revealed as clinging falls away. Sometimes the most spiritual thing is not to get more, but to see the one who keeps needing more, to sit with the hunger, to feel the fear beneath it, to watch the body tighten, to notice the story forming, to see the label, the feeling, the thought, the consciousness, the whole process, and then, instead of feeding it, to breathe. That breath is simple, but it is profound. In that breath, the self does not need to be improved. The moment does not need to be owned. The feeling does not need to be chased. The story does not need to be believed. The body does not need to be perfect. Awareness simply knows. This is a taste of freedom. The more you practice seeing the aggregates, the more compassion grows. You realize that many people are not evil. They are trapped in constructed selves that feel hungry, threatened, unseen, or unsafe. They chase because they believe they are incomplete. They boast because the self needs support. They cling because the self fears disappearance. They compare because perception has wounded them. They attack because mental formations are burning. They consume because feeling is restless. This does not excuse harmful behavior, but it helps you understand the machinery of suffering. And when you understand it in others, you understand it in yourself with less shame. You stop saying, "What is wrong with me?" You begin saying, "These are conditions. This is how craving forms. This is how identity tightens. This is how suffering is built. And because it is built, it can be understood. Because it is conditioned, it can be changed. Because it is not a permanent self, it does not have to rule me forever." This is a hopeful teaching. The self that must always get more is not your prison unless you keep believing it without question. Every moment of mindfulness questions it. Every act of non-clinging weakens it. Every time you feel a desire without obeying it blindly, the illusion loses strength. Every time you receive a feeling as passing, the illusion loses strength. Every time you question a label, the illusion loses strength. Every time you observe a habit instead of becoming it, the illusion loses strength. Slowly, the heart discovers that it does not need to keep adding to itself to be real. It does not need constant praise to exist. It does not need constant pleasure to be alive. It does not need constant improvement to be worthy of care. It does not need constant control to survive change. It does not need constant comparison to know its path. It does not need constant becoming to meet this breath. This is where enough becomes deeper than before. At first, enough meant noticing present blessings. Now enough means seeing that the one who demands endless more is itself a changing construction. The hunger is real as an experience, but it is not ultimate truth. The self that feels incomplete is being made from aggregates in motion. When the making is seen, the demand softens. The heart can stop serving every command of the hungry self. And then life becomes less heavy. You can care for form without being enslaved by appearance. You can feel pleasant and unpleasant tones without chasing or resisting everyone. You can use perception without believing every label. You can work with mental formations without calling every habit destiny. You can rest in consciousness without turning experience into possession. You can live as a person in the world while knowing that the person is a flow, not a fixed cage. This understanding does not remove responsibility. In fact, it makes responsibility wiser. If anger is a formation, you can train it. If craving is conditioned, you can weaken it. If perception is distorted, you can correct it. If the body is impermanent, you can care for it tenderly while it is here. If feelings pass, you can stop building harmful actions around temporary waves. Seeing not self does not make life meaningless. It makes life workable. The self that must always get more creates endless pressure because it believes completion is outside. The awakened heart discovers that freedom is not completion of the self, but release from the illusion that the self can be completed through grasping. You do not become peaceful by giving the hungry self every object it demands. You become peaceful by seeing the hungry self clearly enough that you no longer obey it as master. This is why the Buddha's teaching is so radical. It does not simply comfort the self, it reveals how the self is constructed. It does not only say you deserve peace, it shows why peace has been hidden. The mind has been trying to satisfy a self made from unstable parts, using unstable things in an unstable world. No wonder the heart felt tired. No wonder more never became enough. No wonder craving kept returning. But now, with awareness, the pattern can change. When the body says, "Make me perfect," you can answer with care, not worship. When feeling says, "Chase pleasure now," you can answer with mindfulness, not slavery. When perception says, "Your life is small," you can answer with inquiry, not belief. When mental formations say, "Repeat the old hunger," you can answer with patience, not obedience. When consciousness knows experience, you can let knowing be simple without turning everything into me and mine. This is liberation in daily life, not dramatic, not loud, not something that needs to impress anyone. It is the quiet freedom of not becoming every wave that rises. It is the relief of not having to turn every experience into identity. It is the wisdom of caring without clinging, enjoying without possessing, improving without self-hatred, feeling without drowning, and living without constantly needing more proof that you are complete. The five aggregates create the illusion of a self that must always get more by making a moving process feel like a fixed hunger. Form asks for protection. Feeling asks for repetition. Perception asks for confirmation. Mental formations ask for continuation. Consciousness gathers the stream and the mind calls it me. Then craving says, "Feed this me, enlarge this me, decorate this me, defend this me, complete this me." But Buddhist wisdom enters softly and says, "Look closer. What you are defending is changing. What you are feeding is never satisfied. What you are completing is not fixed. What you are calling mine is passing through." When this is understood, the chase begins to lose its sacredness. More may still come, and you may use it wisely. Less may come, and you may meet it with courage. Pleasure may arise, and you may enjoy it gently. Pain may arise, and you may hold it with compassion. Praise may come, and you may not become addicted. Blame may come, and you may not collapse. Identity may form for practical life, but you no longer mistake it for your deepest refuge. The heart becomes free enough to live. And perhaps this is the quiet blessing hidden in this teaching. You do not have to keep building a self large enough to feel safe. You do not have to keep collecting experiences to feel real. You do not have to keep chasing more to silence the fear of being incomplete. You can begin where you are, with the body as it is, the feeling as it is, the perception seen clearly, the formations observed gently, and consciousness knowing the present moment. You can meet the flow without turning it into a prison. The hungry self says, "Get more, and then you will be whole." The Buddha's wisdom says, "See clearly, and the hunger will no longer rule you." This seeing does not steal life from you, it gives life back. Because when you stop trying to complete an illusion, you finally have energy to touch what is real. Breath, kindness, practice, compassion, presence, the path beneath your feet, the simple moment that does not need to make you more before it can bring you home. And now you can see it clearly. Craving does not always enter your life like a storm. Sometimes it enters like a whisper. It tells you that this breath is not enough, this moment is not enough, this body is not enough, this love is not enough, this life is not enough. It keeps pointing your heart toward what is missing until the blessings already around you become invisible. But Buddhist wisdom reminds us that peace does not begin when every desire is satisfied. Peace begins when the mind stops turning every desire into a master. Tanha makes the present feel incomplete. Clinging makes temporary things feel like they must save you. Sense desire feels sweet at first, but leaves the heart thirsty when awareness is missing. And the false self keeps asking for more because it believes it can be completed by what is passing away. But you are not here to spend your whole life chasing the next thing while missing the quiet gift of now. You are here to wake up, to see the craving before it becomes suffering, to enjoy without owning, to love without hunger, to grow without rejecting yourself, to receive what is here without demanding that life become perfect first. So tonight, let this truth stay with you. The joy you are searching for may not be far away. It may simply be buried beneath the voice that keeps saying, "Not yet." If this teaching touched something in you, leave a comment with the words, "I choose enough." Let those words be your quiet reminder that your life does not have to be perfect before it becomes precious. And if you want more Buddhist wisdom to calm the mind, loosen suffering, and bring you back to peace, subscribe to the channel and turn on the bell. More teachings are waiting for you.